Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome and remind everyone that per Contra Costa County Health Services requirements, masks are required indoors for all persons regardless of vaccination status. Um, Again, I fully acknowledge that people have strong feelings about the mask wearing. I recognize that not everyone agrees with the mask requirements, but I understand your frustration. I would like to sincerely thank everyone in attendance for your cooperation in wearing your mask during today's meeting while in the building. The meeting tonight is being live streamed on the district's YouTube channel, and a link to recording has been posted to the district's website. I'd like to introduce my board members. Vice President Ken Mintz,
Good evening.
Clerk Rachel Hurd,
Hello.
board members Laura Bratt,
Good evening.
and Shelley Clark.
Good evening.
Student board member Lana Batra.
Good evening.
And I'm your board president, Susanna Ordway. Just to let you know, our student board member can cast a preferential vote, which shall not affect the final numerical outcome of the vote and will be recorded in the minutes. Okay. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, 6.0 report of action taken in closed session. So during this evening's closed session meeting, the Board of Education appointed Margaret Hui as Assistant Principal at Venture/Virtual Academy. Margaret's transition date is still being determined, but will occur as soon as possible. In addition, Chief Business Officer Greg Medici has been selected to serve as Deputy Superintendent Chief Business Official for a district in Sonoma County. We congratulate and wish him well in his new position. To ensure continued leadership in this essential position in the district, the board has appointed Danny Hillman as the district's new Chief Business Officer, effective December 6, 2021. The board's vote on both appointments was unanimous. Congratulations. Okay, then for 7.0, acceptance of minutes, may I have a motion to accept the minutes of October 26th and November 1st, 2021 special meeting?
So moved.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Board Member Mintz and seconded by Board Member Bratt. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra,
Aye.
Board Member Clark,
Aye.
Board Member Bratt,
Aye.
Board Member Hurd,
Aye.
Board Member Mintz,
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, great. And then may I have a motion to accept the open session agenda for tonight?
So moved.
I'll second. The motion was made by Board Member Clark and seconded by Board Member Bratt. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra,
Aye.
Board Member Clark,
Aye.
Board Member Bratt,
Aye.
Board Member Hurd,
Aye.
Board Member Mintz,
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Consent agenda. Consent items are considered routine in nature and approved by combining them into a single vote. A member of the board or a member of the public may request that a consent item be removed from the consent agenda, be considered and voted on separately. I do have a request to pull 4 items from our consent agenda tonight. It's 12.1. So that it's be 10.6, 12.2. Now will be 10.7, 12.4 is 10.8, and 12.7 is 10.9. It's being pulled by Helena Doherty Valley. Okay. Okay. I think. Okay, any other items?
Can we pull 12.10? I just want to
10?
have a brief comment on that.
So Susanna, are you ready for a motion?
Yes.
I move approval of consent as amended.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Mintz. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra,
Aye.
Board Member Clark,
Aye.
Board Member Bratt,
Aye.
Board Member Hurd,
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, now 9.0 reports to the board. So 9.1, we have a special report. The 20th anniversary PTA Exceptional Education Committee celebration. SOPA Executive Director Linda Raleigh-Tom and San Ramon Valley Council of PTA President Lisa Gross.
Good evening, trustees. Tonight, we recognize 20 years of exceptional leadership by one of our PTA committees. In 2002, the PTA Special Needs Committee was founded by a group of parents in order to provide information and support to parents and staff so they can help children with special needs to succeed, in order to help all adults and children understand and appreciate the challenges faced by children with special needs, and to work legislatively to secure and retain adequate laws and funding for children with special needs. That committee has served in a capacity to support all students for the last 20 years, and over that time has become the Exceptional Education Committee today. This evening, we celebrated the work of the committee members, many of whom came back to be part of that celebration and are present with us tonight. Lisa and I want to thank everyone for being there. We also want to share that both the town of Danville and the city of San Ramon have provided proclamations on behalf of the PTA and the Special Needs Committee. I'd like to read one of those proclamations from the city of San Ramon. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of San Ramon recognizing the San Ramon Valley Council of PTA's Exceptional Education Committee for 20 years of service. Whereas in 2002, several leaders formed the Special Needs Committee, today known as the Exceptional Education Committee of the San Ramon Valley Council of PTAs, to support parents and families of children with special needs. The members define special needs broadly to include any child with learning or processing differences, physical disabilities, language difficulties, social or emotional issues, and gifted learners. And whereas during the first few years, the committee hosted educational programs that drew large audiences of parents craving support and educators eager to learn. Each school PTA in the San Ramon Valley Unified School District was encouraged to appoint a special needs committee representative. And whereas the founders, with SRVUSD support, held a forum in May 2005 to identify issues and offer solutions. This resulted in an extensive SRVUSD special education design team consisting of parents, school staff, and district staff. This remarkable group recommended significant improvements to the IEP process and suggestions for attracting and retaining qualified staff. And whereas the incredible success of this committee led to the 2007 presentation of how to form a PTA Special Needs Committee at the California State PTA Convention. And in 2008, the San Ramon Valley Council of PTAs won the first ever National PTA Outstanding Advocacy Award for Special Needs Advocacy. And whereas in 2016, the California State PTA adopted a resolution submitted by the San Ramon Valley Council of PTAs supporting teacher training necessary to improve the understanding of dyslexia and early screening. And whereas the San Ramon Valley Council of PTAs Special Needs Committee, today known as the Exceptional Education Committee, has partnered with for 20 years with the San Ramon Valley Unified School District and the Board of Education to support the parents of students with special needs in the San Ramon Valley. And whereas on Tuesday, November 16th, 2021, we celebrate the visionaries who started the Special Needs Committee, the amazing committee chairs, and the San Ramon Valley Unified School District staff and Board of Education members who have collaborated and worked tirelessly to make a difference for children and families. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of San Ramon is pleased to present this proclamation to honor the San Ramon Valley Council of PTA's Exceptional Education Committee's success and to thank you for your years of dedicated service to our community and wish for your continued success. Dated November 16th, 2021, David E. Hudson, Mayor. And like I noted, Town of Danville has the same. I do want to take a minute to thank all of the PTA committee, Special Needs Exceptional Education Committee members who are here tonight, who have participated in the last 20 years, who are currently helping us and participating, for the continued collaboration on behalf of all students with special needs and all students in the San Ramon Valley Unified School District. Without your collaboration and partnership, we could not work as diligently on behalf of all students. So thank you. Trustee Ordway, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, also on behalf of the board, we want to honor the Special Needs PTA Special Needs Committee, Exceptional Education Committee, on your commitment and dedication. I think that this actually, right, this 20 years ago has started our work in equity by including certain groups of students. And I want to further honor, I think, the founding committee members, because there are a few who actually founded the DS Special Needs Committee. And they are Nancy Vandell, Joan Buchanan, and our own Rachel Hurd. And we want to honor them for their commitment to all students and their work with the district and with PTA. So I know, I don't know, Nancy's
Fortunately,
probably,
Nancy and Joan
Joan.
could not be with us. Nancy did participate in our celebration earlier via Zoom, and Joan is not able to be here. But thank you, President Ordway, and on behalf of everyone, I want to present you.
Can I invite one more person to join in that foursome? Karen Heilbronner was another partner in that beginning, and I would just like to include her as well, if that's okay. Karen, can you come up too?
Okay, great. Moving on, 9.2 strategic direction and more on equity. Superintendent?
Thank you, President Ordway. As I think Hong Nguyen's coming forward, I would just like to introduce this report. This is the second report that we have brought forward since you have passed our strategic directions in late spring. Again, the purpose is that we will follow a certain framework. And that framework is, what are we focusing on based upon the broader strategic directions? Why are we focusing on it? What data we've used to determine that focus in terms of our actions? what our desired outcomes are, and how we're measuring it. So we are getting better at this as we work through this new process. And I'm really very happy to bring forward this report with an entire team. Hong is our lead, as you know, and we're very grateful to your leadership. And there are many others on our team, both at the district office and at our school sites and in our departments, who are also engaged in helping us lead this work for all, and most importantly, to support our students the very best we can. So with that, President Norway, I will turn the presentation over to Hong Nguyen.
All right, thank you. So my name is Hong Nguyen. I am the Director of Education Equity. Good evening, trustees. Thank you for having me today to review with you what we've been doing so far with equity in our district and where we need to go. And so we put this up here. It's an image that we have that is framed and put around our district and at school sites, just really emphasizing the fact that our strategic directions, having all 6, is very important. And within that, we have equity. And we know that equity is not something that can be done by itself and in a silo. It needs to be done throughout everything that we do. And so we want to emphasize equity within our 6 strategic directions. And as you heard this year, you'll be hearing a little bit more about the other strategic directions. And so I'm following up our deep learning and innovation with equity. So equity, we will ensure all students are empowered to reach their full potential by valuing student voice, because we know that that is very important for us to be able to listen and hear our student voice and to lean in, addressing systemic inequities and closing opportunity gaps. Now, when we talk about intersection, we know that equity is overarching. And so within that, we have social and emotional well-being as well as deep learning. We want to make sure that we are emphasizing that whole child. And so you'll see that that is in the middle of our Venn diagram right there. And so really looking at the intersection of that. Our strategic goals for equity in the next 3 to 5 years, really emphasizing on creating a learning environment that is safe, equitable, and provide a sense of belonging for all students and staff. And I want to emphasize the words all. And we want to make sure that all students and staff are feeling the sense of belonging, safe, and equitable. We also want to create culturally responsive and equity-informed policies, procedures, and practices that lead to equitable outcomes for students. And these are definitely great conversations that we have with our school leaders and at site levels to really look at what we have in place to really figure out what we need to do to make some changes so that way we are serving our students. And we're talking about all of our students. And of course, develop teaching and learning experiences that are responsive to and supportive of diverse cultures and identities, because we are a very diverse district. We want to make sure that we are really supporting all of our students through that. And our last goal that we have is really to look at recruiting, hiring, and retaining a more diverse staff. And we know that that is an area that we do need to work on. And so we'll be talking a little bit about what that will look like. Some of our baseline data that we have in looking at where we're at is our college and career readiness data. That is a data that we do get and see to see where our students are in terms of the readiness for college. We also look at our suspension data. And with the suspension data that we actually have currently and dating back from before our pandemic and then throughout, we do notice that there are specific subgroups and specific ethnicities that are affected through the suspensions that we have, and we need to put some programs and things that are in place to be able to support our students through that. We also look at our CAS as well as our FastBridge data and our ESGI. CAS is a test that we took prior to the pandemic, but since then, because of everything that's going on, FastBridge was something that we used last year, and it is a measure that we continue to use and looking at that screener data. We also have graduation rates and really looking at our students that are graduating from our district and looking at the percentages there. We do have a very high percentage of students graduating, but we do have some subgroups within there that can do better. And then we also have our staff demographic data that is there. So really looking at our hiring practices and seeing what our demographic data looks like. That is all our quantitative data, but we also have qualitative data, really looking at surveying our staff, talking to our principals, our admins, really bringing that information back to our cabinet and having just real discussions about what we need to do to make some changes in our district So that way we're building equity for all. So what are some of our drivers that we have? We want to make sure that we're looking at the needs, opportunities for our students to be able to succeed in education in our district. And that is very important to us. And we need to look at all different types of opportunities, whether it's access to different math pathways or for them to be able to receive services within schools. We need to look at all those different opportunities. We also have our fair education as well as our California Common Core state standards that really demand us to have a curriculum that is reflective of the diversity within our communities. We have our adopted resources that are there, but we also have our supplemental resources that are used in the classroom. And so we want to make sure that we are looking at our curriculum as well as our materials that are being used. Are they diverse enough for our students? We also want to empower our students through student voice, really participating in student forums, being able to talk to our student senate, what are our affinity groups that we have on campus, how are they feeling? So really valuing our student voice and really getting ourselves out there to hear what they have to say. Also foster awareness around culturally responsive learning environments within schools, in the classrooms. Do we have culturally responsive environments where students feel like they are learning? Are they being heard within the classrooms? Are they being met in terms of their needs? Promoting inclusive practices for all students. We are always constantly working on that to make sure all our students feel included. And then really working with our students to reflect in staff to educate and support them. We know that that's important for us to be able to also work with our staff and get them ready to foster what they need to do in the classroom. So what are some of our action items that we have that we've been working on this year and moving beyond this year? So engaging in implicit bias professional development. We've been doing that at the beginning of this year, and we actually have another couple series to go through. Our administrators have gone through just really about themselves, the self-care for educators, but then also really going into what is implicit bias, what does microaggression look like, how does that really impact us in our thinking and what we need to do within our school systems to help improve it. And so that is something that we have done at the beginning of this year, and we'll continue to do that this year. We also are supporting an effective implementation of our gender support plan. It is mandated for us to make sure that we are supporting our students through that and refining that system that we have in place so that way we're supporting our students when they come to us with that need. Nurturing inclusive learning environments, really making sure that we are building an inclusive environment for all students, working with our student with disabilities population, working with our students that have specific needs within the classroom, building in interventions that are in place. All of these different things we need to make sure that we are doing in order to provide that nurturing environment. Build capacity in staff to lead restorative justice work. We have a number of school sites that's doing great work with restorative justice, and we want to be able to continue that work and also have our district support our school staff as well as our sites in leading that work. And so really building out our capacity and our staff to be able to continue to do that work. So that way we're supporting our students at the school site so they know what to do when they come across a specific incident or having those conversations that are real and impactful for them. And then also diversifying our district staffing. That is something that we definitely are working on this year, and we want to make sure that we are working on that. And then also reviewing some of our district policies, procedures, and practices in place. What is it that we currently have in place right now? And what are some things that we need to add or make some changes to? So really going through and revisiting some of our policies, procedures, and practices, and looking at our current board policies and also administrative regulations as well. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into those actions. So our implicit bias professional development, we've been going through a number of different cycles, really is to have our administrators understand their own implicit bias in their positions. And so we do have cycles of professional development learning series for administrators to participate in. A number of our administrators participated in anti-racist facilitator training. Then after that training, they were able to have the courageous conversations with our administrators. And we actually did this past Monday, and it went really well. And we had our management team, our leadership team actually participate in that. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing those conversations within our administrators. And of course, at our district as well as our site-based professional development, at our site levels, we have continuous cycles of improvements are being done, and the school sites are choosing specific goals based on strategic directions and really looking at what needs to be done at their school sites through a 4 to 6 week cycle to see if there's been any improvements that are made. And so equity being an area that a number of the schools are focusing on. And so really looking at the professional development that's done at the sites. There are some sites that are doing some work around restorative justice. There are some sites that are doing some professional development just around race. And so it does vary from site to site, but it is also based on their site context and culture. And then we also have trainings that inform implicit bias, and we want it to really inform us in the classroom and also with our hiring practices. And so those are a number of the different things that we are working on this year. Our gender support plan, we've had a number of trainings this year for administrators, social workers, counselors, psychologists, registrars, office managers, and site designees at the different sites. So in that way, they know what to do when a student comes to them and needs some support for updating name changes or gender change and going through that process. What is the law behind it? And what do they need to do in order to support our students through that process? And really just having a better understanding of what they need to do in order to support our students on campus. There's a lot of privacy issues that are there and privacy laws that we need to make sure that we abide by. And so going through that professional training for gender support plan was really important. And we wanted to make sure that that was in place. We also had made some updates to our district website in order to support our students because we did not have that before. And so if you were to visit our district website, you'll be able to find information on gender support plan. How can students receive some support through the school, their site designees at each site if they have questions, and really going through and having any questions regarding if they wanted to make any changes to their name and or gender through that process. For inclusive learning environments, just really increasing opportunities and access for all students. What are some of the access barriers that we have and really looking at those? And so providing those opportunities for students to be able to take a math class if they choose to do so, or if there are different barriers that are stopping them, what's stopping them, and really trying to figure that piece out. And so we want to make sure that we're opening up access and providing different opportunities for all of our students to participate in them. We also have gender inclusivity, and that's something else that was added to district website, and also providing some more information to our staff regarding what that looks like and what that is. And support of our GSA, which is our Great Straight Alliance, as well as our PRISM clubs that we have at the high school, middle schools, and then elementary schools. We also have our student as well as our staff affinity focus groups. And so we have our student senate that we really go to hear and as well as listen to what students have to say. We have our students GSA groups that we go in here and listen to what they have to say. We are working on really trying to figure out what is the best way for us to communicate with our affinity groups and find out and lean in and listen to what are some of the different action items or some of the incidences or problems that are going on. And so really building that out with our students and staff this year. And hopefully we'll be able to build a system where we can continuously work with them to do these affinity as well as focus groups. And so we know that that's something that we have a need for, and we want to be able to do that in order to build in that inclusive learning environment. And one of the last things that we have on here is our analysis of our health curriculum and really looking at what kind of health curriculum do we have in place, and is that really meeting the needs of our students, and really making some updates and decisions on how we can best serve our students. And so that is another area that we want to make sure that we're building on. Restorative justice training that we have done this year. We've actually done a little bit more training than I anticipated. I feel like I've been doing presentation after presentation, but the Responding to Discrimination and Hate Handbook was completed at the beginning of this year. And so we were able to go through and do a number of different trainings for administrators as well as site leaders, for our psychologists or social workers, just really a lot of people that really work and support with our students, especially when we get to a place of really handling discrimination and hate on campus. And so figuring out what is our tier 1, 2, and 3 levels, and what we need to do in order to best support our students and provide them with that training. And so that has been done at the beginning of this year. We've also done a number of different work at school sites, of course. Implementing restorative practices in schools to reduce our suspension rates is really what our goal is, to improve students' behavior and repair harm. Sometimes we go through and we actually go solve problems and give out consequences, but then the harm is not repaired. And so we want to make sure that we're able to repair that harm, so that way the student that feels like they were the victim or is the victim is going through and repairing that piece that right there. We also want to make sure that we're deepening our restorative justice work at our school sites. This year, we had a small number of us actually go out and do some more restorative justice training. And so our plan is to really look at focal schools within our district, so then that way we can actually implement more of the restorative justice training at the school sites for not just administrators, but also for the staff too. We have 36 schools, and so that's a lot of schools to be able to go through and do it all at once. But we know that this is really important work and that we need to have, and some of the schools have already started in this work. And so we want to make sure that we are providing that support for our schools. And then we also have student forums as well as seminars that are in place. And so we want to make sure that we are continuing that. And so one of the high schools that we actually had, because of some of the discrimination incidences that occurred on campus, they decided that a student forum is something that they needed to do. And so they went ahead and made that as part of their action plan for the support of the students, so they can hear student voice. And that was not something that they had done before. And it's been pretty phenomenal. And so continuing some of that student forums just to hear student voices is really important. Of course, we're also working with a number of professional learning and partnerships, such as MEB Consulting, AASA, Equity and Action Cohort. We have a number of administrators participating in that. SEEDS is through Restorative Justice, and so we're working with them through that. We also have our San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition that we're working with, and also a diversity a Discovery Counseling Center, as well as PFLAG. And so these are just a number of the different partnerships that we have currently that we're working with in order for us to really figure out what we need to do within our district to really support our students. Diversifying district staffing, I'm going to pass it over to Keith.
Thank you, Hong. So as one of the things Hong mentioned, one of our strategic goals is to recruit, employ, and retain a more diverse staff across the school district. And the driver underlying that goal is the desire and actually the need to ensure that our students see themselves reflected in the staff members who teach and support and mentor and lead them across all levels of our system each and every day. Educational literature and research consistently bears out that students tend to perform better academically, they feel more included, and they perceive greater connections in school when the staff members who work with them mirror the diversity that they represent. With that as the goal and the driver, we're going to be working collaboratively as school sites, as departments, and as a learning community with and through the leadership of the Human Resources Department to diversify staffing in many ways, including along racial and ethnic lines. Last year, as we engaged our community and evolved in the development of the strategic directions, we compiled and examined data, pardon me, that highlighted the disparity between the racial and ethnic diversity represented by our students and that which was represented by our staff. We're in the process of updating that data for this year's group of employees, and we expect to have it finalized and available for the board soon. This year's data is going to serve as a baseline to which we can refer, and against which we can measure our progress over time and improvement in meeting this goal. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the phenomenon that I'm talking about, the disparity in diversity between students and staff members, is not new, nor is it specific to San Ramon Valley. For that reason, we're going to need to be very creative and strategic in our approaches to addressing this goal. We're going to need to be prepared to try out-of-the-box ideas and approaches and to see exactly what's going to work for us in bringing about the desired outcome of diversifying our staff. The strategies are going to evolve over time, and we will build upon our successes and what we learn throughout the journey. I'll highlight for you some of the actions that we plan to undertake throughout the remainder of 21-22 in pursuit of this goal. First, we will revisit and we will examine our recruitment strategies and plans to see exactly how we can more effectively reach a broader and a more diverse pool of prospective employees and applicants. We know that classified employee recruitment and hiring generally tends to go around the clock and around the calendar in a school district. But by its nature, certificated recruitment and hiring tends to be more seasonal. So this work is already underway in the Classified Human Resources Department. We've held multiple virtual as well as in-person recruitment events already this year, and there are more planned underway. We've advertised our hiring needs in several ways, traditional ways in some cases, such as on our website and school newsletters and social media. I reported earlier this year that we were going to do some radio advertising on local radio, and we did that here in the Valley on KKIQ, which was new for us. And our efforts are going to be expanding beyond those strategies in the coming weeks and months, and will include, for the first time, advertising some of our staffing needs on highway billboards along Highway 580, along 880 in Alameda County, and along Highway 80 in over in West Contra Costa County and in Alameda County as well. We're going to be doing fast sign and marquee postings at our schools and on district buildings throughout the community. And we just talked today, this was, again, an out-of-the-box kind of approach, about perhaps setting up recruitment booths at local and regional supermarkets and shopping areas to basically advertise and to reach potential applicants to fulfill some of our classified employee hiring needs. For certificated recruitment, we plan to sign up for and attend far more recruitment events this year than we have in the past, and we're specifically going to be seeking out opportunities to recruit at schools that typically cater to more diverse student populations within their education, their teacher education programs. Some of those include San Francisco State University, Cal State East Bay, San Jose State University, Monterey Bay, Fresno State campuses, and University of California campuses in Berkeley, Merced, Davis, and Santa Cruz. We're also looking into some distance recruiting this year down in the Southern California area. And we're also considering including recruitment events in states outside of California based upon the feedback and the input that we've gotten from neighboring districts who have done some work and in some cases had success and in other cases not had success in recruiting at a distance. We're also going to be exploring and developing relationships and alliances with organizations that support teachers, educators from diverse backgrounds, including Black Teacher Project, which is something that I learned about in conversation about the work that we're doing here with one of my colleagues in the Pittsburgh Unified School District. Again, we're in the seminal stages of this work. So with the goal being to establish improved presence with and broader exposure to more diverse pools of potential teaching and non-teaching staff who are attracted to working with students here in our community. For selection, we're going to begin more carefully examining our staff selection processes and procedures for certificated, classified, and management staff to ensure that to the very best of our ability, we're attracting, interviewing, and selecting employees fairly and based upon the true needs and priorities that we have as a school district. At this point, we're augmenting the standard employment application with some supplemental questions that address some of the major pillars of our new strategic directions. We're also exploring how we might engage in some blind applicant screening for positions to help ensure that we're really inviting the strongest and the most qualified candidates to interview with us, irrespective of their names or where they maybe went to college or where they live, etc., to help ensure that bias is eliminated and preferential treatment in the screening process is not occurring, and that we're maximizing applicants for access for all of our applicants for positions in the district. That undertaking is going to start this spring with the screening of applications for management positions. We're also going to be examining the actual questions that we have been and continue to use in the interview process for various types of positions, specifically for teaching positions, site administrators, office staff, paraprofessionals, custodial staff, to determine the extent to which they are somehow biased for or against certain individuals or populations. And we plan to develop standardized interview processes for those positions to ensure, again, that the questions that we ask really get at the heart of what is needed to perform the position successfully in our school district and in the most inclusive and unbiased manner possible. The human resources team sees itself working with individuals and groups of individuals comprised of Hong Nguyen, our equity director, school site and district level administrators, employees, union leadership, and others to engage in this work together. We'll be piloting new strategies and procedures and assessing their impact on affecting more equitable, fair, and inclusive employee selection procedures. We believe that these and other strategies that we develop will help us beginning this spring to attract, recruit, and hire a more diverse pool of employees in the district, and that includes management and non-management staff, that better reflects the diversity among students here in the San Ramon Valley, and that better allows our students to see themselves reflected in those adults who are working with them. We intend to build upon, improve, and expand the strategies that I've described this evening in future school years using the evolving employee demographic data as a basis for determining the success and the effectiveness of our approaches.
Thanks.
Back to you, Hong.
Thank you. So as we continue on, we know that hiring and recruiting, retaining very diverse staff is really important. So thank you, Keith, for sharing that. Going into looking at some of our board policies, procedures, as well as practices that are in place. So we are in the middle of going through our board policies and administrative regulations and really looking at them closely to see if that is something that is still beneficial to us, or do we have to make some changes? So as we go through that, we definitely will need your involvement board for our board policies as well as our administrative regulations. And so we will be needing your support through that and also giving us some guidance for examining current practices that are in place, such as our math pathways, just being one of those different practices. We have a number of different practices within our school sites and in our district, and we know that we need to go back and really re-examine a number of our practices to see if that's best and beneficial to all of our students, and really emphasizing all. And then, of course, refining our responding to discrimination hate handbook and our gender support plan protocols that are in place. And that is something that we have really been focusing on at the beginning of this year. So really looking at some of our existing work and equity, really going through and informing our equity work that we have, and really enhancing in a number of the different areas that I have talked about before. And so to just summarize some of the different intended outcomes that we actually have, we want to foster a sense of belonging and community for all of our students. And we know that that is important. We also want to make sure that we're building capacity at our focal schools in restorative justice, but we also have a number of schools that have been doing this work for a really long time. We have increase in self-awareness as well as understanding of bias. And so through this, we want to make sure that we are systemically working with our leaders through that with our continuous cycles of improvement, really looking at different goals that we actually have in equity and really building on that. For embracing more systemic interventions. So we have interventions at our different school sites, and really working with our MTSS liaisons and getting them to really support the work that we need to do, looking at data for our students and really building out our intervention programs that we have and making sure that it is meeting the needs of all of our students. And of course, also improving learning outcomes for our underrepresented students. We have a number of underrepresented students within our school system, and we need to make sure that we're ensuring that we are getting them up to where they need to be. We also want to make sure that we are decreasing our suspension rates. And so we have a number of different subgroups that, as well as different ethnicities, where we notice that the numbers are a little bit higher than they should be. And so we want to make sure that through our restorative justice practices that we actually have, that we'll be able to work with our students in getting them to a point where, you know, a restorative practice circle or going through and having these conversations will really help and benefit them in really looking at their behaviors. And then also increase the engagement for our healthy, in our Healthy Kids survey. That's one particular survey that we do use quite often in looking to see where our engagement is in the classroom. We want to decrease our discrimination and hate incidences that are occurring at schools. And so with that, definitely is an intended outcome that we want to be able to have and ensure. And of course, really increasing our hiring. And I know Keith had spoken to this about
hiring our Black, Indigenous, and people of color BIPOC staff, and to really expand on attracting and developing and retaining them within our district, and really establishing opportunities for us to have these different forums and really bringing in our students of color to have some of these conversations that we need to have. And so all of these are intended outcomes that we have for this year, and really going back full circle in our equity work, that we want to make sure that we are valuing our student voice, really addressing the systemic inequities, as well as closing opportunity gaps for our students. And so these next steps that we have is really to implement the strategies as outlined in this presentation. We'll work on continuing to regularly monitor progress through towards our goals that we have, really adjust strategies based on the data that we have in place, and really continue to update you on the progress that we made. And so those are a number of different next steps that we have. And I did want to note that there were some changes in the presentation, and so that has been uploaded to our district website as well. Any questions?
And before we do that, I just want to take us back to the strategic directions with very brief comment. Sometimes the equity discussion across our communities and across our country can become a divisive one. And so I'm very, very much interested in clarifying why we do this work. I don't believe anyone, no matter what their views are, would argue with the statement that all students must be successful in our San Ramon Valley Unified School District. All students. Some of our students are not. The conditions that may exist for that lack of success is something we need to take responsibility for. It's not about the student now. It's about the adults, the professionals, our parents, our community. All students deserve to be successful. I think we agree. Some of our students are not. Our job is to create the conditions, and our job is to go as deeply as we can to figure out what those conditions are. And that is our starting point. That is our foundation, and that's the reason. We have specific data, for example, and I want to go a little further because you basically know how I operate in this seat. When you look at our student achievement data for some of our students who identify as African American in the San Ramon Valley Unified School District, that data tells a story. It's our job to figure out what that story is. It doesn't mean that necessarily anyone has done anything wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are pointing fingers of criticism. It means we have a job to do to figure out what has caused that reality. That's what this commitment is about. That's what we're bringing to you based upon your direction. And that's what we will continue to work deeply with our families, with our staff, and most importantly, our students who have basically said, we need your help to belong. We need your help to be successful. And some of our students don't need us as much. I'm just going to put that out there as well. Some of our students don't need us as much, but some of our students absolutely do. And when we meet those students who need us the most, it has been my experience, and it is actually research-based, that all students can then be supported most effectively. So that's the foundation of the work we're doing. That's what we have been sharing. It's still in the process of needing to be focused, and it needs to be more precise. That is something we're sharing with you because we're learning as we go as well. And from my seat, I'm grateful to you as our board for giving us this very clear direction last June. And we will continue to do our very best working with everyone to bring about the results that you have asked us to do. And I hope we do it in a way that brings as many people as possible to the table, because supporting students and student needs, there's probably nothing more important that I, in this role with our team, you in your role as our leaders and our entire community, there's nothing better than ensuring that all students succeed in the San Ramon Valley Unified School District. So thank you for your attention. It was a long presentation because there are a lot of components to this part of our plan. We turn it over to you, President Ordway.
Thank you, Dr. Malloy and our director.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? or-
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask.
Oh,
if you had
we
any
lost Hong.
questions.
We lost Hong. I guess I can, okay. And this actually is maybe more for Keith. Hong and Keith, thank you for the presentation. It was very in-depth. I actually came with a list of questions and most of them were answered, and I appreciate the comprehensive presentation. The one question that I have is in our initiative to diversify staff, is this keeping us from filling positions, and is it a part of our staffing shortage?
No, I don't believe so. I think that the staffing shortage is a function of much more than that, quite frankly. And I think we've talked about some of the root causes of the staffing shortage and some of the flight from the area that we have seen to other areas, et cetera, due to economic conditions and those types of things. So this is not in any way hindering us. In fact, I think it's actually broadening and expanding the base of employees who can, should, and will be considered as applicants who can, should, and will be considered as potential employees in the district. I think this will be helpful, Laura.
Great, thank you.
Any others? Otherwise, I do have several cards for this item. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure, is it Zoe Perrin? Zay, sorry. Zay Perrin for an item 9.2. Oh, go ahead and, go to the mic.
So I have a couple questions as regards to equity as one of the 1% of the population of Black families in this community. I would like to know how much of this training has been accomplished and completed with the administration, because I can tell you when I speak at my next point, it's failed across all contingencies with my family. And I've been here for 10 years. And my children have been in this school district for 10 years. So really interested to know how many of the administration have already gone through the training, including the harassment and racist training. What refinements are you going to do to the harassment and racist handbook? Because your schools aren't following it. So maybe you shouldn't be training them on it because they aren't applying it. And then when you talk about diminishing the amount of racist incidents, discriminatory incidents, how many incidents have occurred in this last year? How many occur per semester? And at which schools? We went to Greenbrook. We went to Charlotte Wood. My daughter is currently a junior at SRV. In her 10 years, she's been called the N-word. She's been targeted. She's been harassed for being a Black woman every single year. All of this is nothing but words and pieces of paper attached to walls and put in pieces of in presentations, as far as I'm concerned, until you actually get data, facts, goals that are smart and have meaning and time. I don't have 3 to 5 years for you all to do your job because you failed my daughter. Every single thing that you have on there about success, not successful. My family is suffering because my daughter is suffering because you're taking too long on equity. And there's no meat in that presentation. I'm sorry, with all due respect. You just spoke words. There's no action in that. The action that you listed has no action at all. It needs to change, and some action actually needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. Thank you. I don't need my other 23 seconds.
Yeah, would you?
Thank
answer some
you.
of the questions?
Again, I share a response. I appreciate the reflections. The reason why we last spring in the middle of COVID had the workshops to say that we needed to move quicker, more effective, and faster, which was the ask. It came from our communities through the broad engagement. You gave that direction. I can't speak historically because I actually wasn't here, except to say that without the board's direction and approval in a public forum, as it was done, it makes it challenging to do this work systemically. We've got that. Number two, the handbook is absolutely expected. It was finished last June. All we need to hear, and again, we've published this as many times as we can, this is why this work is urgent. This is why we have to do it as effectively as we can. And the only way we're going to be able to interrupt it is that our team, and many of them are in the back here, every single school, it's been published, I put it out there recently, has a district supervisor. That number, all you do is click on your school and you get a number. And that number must get back to you within 24 hours. We've just implemented that in the last 6 weeks because of the very issue that we've just heard. You have an incident, you don't feel it's being dealt with at school, because we do work hard with our principals, you call that number, it's our team's job to move fast. 3, the training that we have engaged in historically prior to my coming was taken up by many of our staff who are very committed to this work. But I shared with our board, it wasn't systemic enough. We've just begun that, literally this year. And we are focusing right now on leaders, because our formal leaders create the conditions to do what we just heard, which is to eradicate, interrupt, and stop any form of discrimination, racism, and hate. And while we're doing that, we're also wrestling with, and I have no issue putting it out there, with those who would like us not to do this work. And that also is part of what we are working through, not running away from, working through. But the commitment I can make as the superintendent to you as our board is, the only way we can interrupt this, change it, stop it, is that we actually have the accountability system that we heard about, which means there has to be responses. There cannot be tolerance. We do care about all kids. We understand that sometimes they make horrific mistakes. That's why restorative is deeply a part of the commitment that's before you. But this cannot go unnoticed. I would hope that even the one very important measure, that any time an issue of racism or discrimination happens on campus, and again, if this is not happening, you just need to let us know. The letter goes out to the entire community. Why? Because we can't do this alone. We need our entire community to help us with this. If you're sitting in a situation where anyone here or anyone who's listening, and I can say it this emphatically, who has brought an issue of discrimination and hate forward to their school, and it didn't result in what I'm talking about, we need to hear about that. That commitment is clear, the expectation is clear, and frankly, that part of the puzzle, as hard as it is not as difficult as changing attitudes, beliefs, behaviors. That's what is going to take the longer and harder road. But at the end of the day, children like your daughter and others in our district, which is why I ended the presentation to say, our data speaks loudly. And in the San Ramon Valley Unified School District, our data specific to African-American kids says that the actions there, while we are working on all of our students' success, has to be focal point. So all I can say to you, our board, and to anyone who's listening, and to you who shared the comment, we need to hear about it. We promise we will act on it, and we will do our very best to resolve it in the most effective way possible. Because that is a commitment. It's not just words, because we're already doing that. And I'm just needing to continue to hear from our community when things aren't being done, as I've just said, because I trust our staff. We're all learning together, but I do trust our staff, and I think we can get to a good place.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say something to that as well? I just want to say I appreciate what you shared and the story that you told. And so I do want to see if we can connect, so then that way I can hear more about what we need to do to make some of these changes within our district. We know that there are specific ethnicities as well as subgroups that need support. And we want to make sure that we're doing right by our students, and our different actions that we have in place are really supporting them. And we are working hard with our administration as well as our staff, and really building out a system that's going to work and be sustainable. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that, and we want to be able to support you and your family and all of our students that are in this district. And so thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Susan Lancaster on 9.2.
Hello. So I also want to talk about your section of the anti-racist training. I have my opinions. I don't know what's going on in your actual situation in your schools, so this is a much broader approach. So last meeting, you explained that the anti-racist book that you approved for one of your many books, that it would only be used in the ethnic studies. It was one of many books, and it was for discussion and not as doctrinal truth. However, in this equity section, you are now instituting anti-racist training for all managers. Now, you said all administrators, one other place it says all managers, requiring them to be equipped in this training to put it into action in their daily work and in the classroom and in hiring. I get that. That makes sense. Much of this training, however, has become a huge profitable business for all sorts purporting to be experts on anti-racism. Critics challenge some of the prominent trainers as promoting materials and methods which are actually can be viewed as racist and discriminatory. One prominent critic, John McWhorter, he is a well-respected Columbia University professor and writer. This is him. He has a new book. He is a Black liberal. I've just read about him. I do not know anything about him personally other than what I read, and I read his articles. He is a Black liberal who has written a new book, Woke Racism: How a New Religion Has Betrayed Black America, in which he argues against what he calls a religion of anti-racism. In his recent NPR interview, he argues that the cultural left, along with major institutions and companies, have gone too far in embracing this anti-racist ideas. He specifically criticizes two books, Ibrahim Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist and Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. Of White Fragility, he says, and I quote, "It is racist. I'm saying that if you write a book that teaches that Black people's feelings must be stepped around to an exquisitely sensitive degree that hasn't been required of other human beings, you're condescending to Black people. In supposing that Black people have, no resilience, you are saying that Black people are unusually weak. You are saying that we are lesser. You are saying that we, because of circumstances of American social history, cannot be treated as adults. And in a technical sense, that's discriminatory. My questions to you as a board: who is being required to have this training? Will this include your teachers? What materials are you going to use? I understand it definitely needs to be addressed, but there are lots of materials that are poor and maybe not addressing the problem. Will this board have any input or latitude regarding the selection of materials? Like he said, maybe he'd like to see the materials. Or will we have a whole program dictated by the state program?
That's 3 minutes.
Dictated by the state.
Yeah.
So I wanted to address the anti-racist facilitators trainings. We actually had a number of our managers, administrators went through 21 days of looking at self-care for educators, and within that, really looking at their own self-care, but then working on implicit bias, microaggressions, all of these different things that are important for us to be able to know and understand. And 13 people, managers as well as administrators, decided they wanted to participate in the anti-racist facilitator trainings, because at the end of the 6 hours that they're going to have over a 3-week period, they would be able to facilitate a small group conversations with our administrators and management team, which is what had happened on this past Monday, really looking at our own self-care, our own biases that we actually have, and really having those deep conversations about that and what we actually notice, as well as what we are going to do in order to move our work forward. And so that's the anti-racist facilitators training that went along with the actual implicit bias training that we did.
And I think it's important just for the board to recall that the strategic directions speak about all staff. The state doesn't tell us how we do it. Much of the learning is done in the work we do together. The bottom line practical purpose is so that when we're hearing experiences of those that have a different identity than, say, myself, we can we can understand it. When we hear and understand discrimination, we can interrupt it, because part of what our problem is that without that learning, sadly, what needs to be confronted can go unnoticed. And that's how we get into the challenge of not being able to do what we must do for all students, but in particular, those who may be more harmed by the circumstances. So that's the purpose of the training, but it doesn't come from any state mandated source. And it oftentimes is where we're bringing different resources to bear. It's not like we're following one book. It's not like we're following one speaker. It doesn't work like that in my experience of doing this important work. It's about getting to a deeper place with a number of supports that help us help students.
So anti-racist really is in our definition of training and stuff. It's really opening up to different perspectives. It's looking at our own implicit bias, really.
And then it's our job as a system to be accountable.
Right.
So that we are communicating with our families when something happens. We are supporting a restorative process so students can learn from it. And we aren't sweeping anything under the rug while we're focusing on the student who's been harmed the most. Because that is key in this conversation in order for us to ensure that all students are served, but in particular, those who may be less served are actually served much more effectively.
Okay. Helen of Doherty Valley.
Dr. Malloy, you said that you want all students to be successful and that racism is about, the biases of all students. Let me ask you this. Is my student on your group to, as all the students? Because I feel, these gentlemen, these people are right. You are failing in, racism inequity. Because for my family, we come from Taiwan. And it is one thing to be one race among a majority of the race. It's another to be discriminated among other races that we are forced to be identified with. Just because I look Asian, my family from Taiwan, which is a democratic country, is forced to be identified as communist Chinese. So my student is taught communist Chinese ancestry, communism in your school, and it's not okay with me because that is not where we come from. And as you know, these days, communist Chinese keep sending war jets to Taiwan. And I actually fear for my life. There are communist Chinese teenagers who are around my house, eavesdropping, stalking my family. Every morning, I need to pray so hard that my student walking to school back and forth will not get stabbed because communist Chinese are on us, because every time I talk, they know me. I have to even ask you to please delete me, remove me completely so that my student can be saved. What are you doing about that? It goes all ways. I have a question for Ms. Hong. Ms. Hong, I would like you to please answer my questions after I ask the question. If I were a student in this school district, and we're talking about current events, Biden and Xi just met. So if somebody says that, in school, communist Chinese students said to the teacher that Taiwan is a part of China, and my student dares to say, no, Taiwan is an independent country, does not belong to China, is that racism? Is that racism? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to pull my student out?
Is that really
accuse him
happening?
of racism?
Is that really happening in our
It's a
classrooms?
hypothetical question, but it's
Hypothetical.
happening to me being stalked. That is true. I have videos, I have pictures, I have shared
Is this on a
with you
school
guys.
site?
No, but your
Then
ordinance
that's out
is
of our
now regulating
jurisdiction.
off-school hours. Please don't cut into my comment time. You owe me 5 seconds because you cut into my comment. I would also like to know if my student who is straight
Thank
and
you, Helen. That's 3 minutes.
she
I'm
owes me
sorry.
5 seconds.
That's 3 minutes.
She cut into my time.
You need to stay on topic, and that is 3 minutes.
It is on topic. I'm talking about racism against my family. You know, you guys are hypocrites. Your racism is who you choose to be, the race that is being chosen as the one who is the receiving hypocrites.
Mike Arata.
I request the board's indulgence before I start because I reflected comments based on the slide deck that was released as part of the agenda on Friday. Pardon? Oh, okay. But at any rate, you changed the slide deck. I have my comments keyed to the original slide deck from Friday. So it's going to take extra time. And I had set things up over here with Logan as to specific slides. Apparently that doesn't work anymore. So I'll do my best. Okay. Okay, what was originally slide 6 deals with equitable outcomes, among other things. So please define equitable outcomes and specifically how those will be measured. Typically, the term refers to an equality of result. And the way you accomplish that is by diminishing some standards. So is that going to happen? Next slide was 7. Does that still correspond? Okay, that's completely different. Equity baseline data, look at this. It's not related. I think I can go on. This dealt with suspensions. How will you seek equitable outcomes in dealing with suspensions? Will you also administer differential behavioral standards, different standards for one group from another group? Slide 9 was next. Key actions it was. Again, quite different. This one talked about implicit bias originally. Not the case anymore.
But first bullet point.
Pardon me, it does. It was a single 2-word entry before. So yes, it does indeed. Thank you. What are the dimensions of implicit bias? Training materials that were linked for your district personnel who trained with a group called the Equity Literacy Institute were given a paper entitled Key White Male Culture Characteristics. And those traits include a tendency to rugged individualism, a can-do attitude, operating from principles and conscience, a focus on hard work, action, and task completion, striving toward success and materialism, measured moderation. Now, to most people, those are positive characteristics, but not to these guys. Those traits, quote, collectively create a thick web of what's expected of white males, and by association, everyone else. So all people are measured against a white male standard of organizational worth and contribution, unquote. In other words, if you expect these productive behaviors from non-white males, you're implicitly guilty of implicit bias. Next one was originally 10. That's same? Okay. Next, you specified some of your trainers. One of them is Courageous Conversations. That group cost taxpayers $36,000 so far at $1,000 per hour, plus substantial cost for substitutes. I understand $20,000 or a little bit more. The training included a systemic equity transformation framework, which specifies learning critical race theory tenets. Now, since taxpayers provide the funding for such training activity, can Mr. Perrin and I sit in on such training? We're among the taxpayers who pay for it. So, Mr. Perrin, you agree? I think that'd be beneficial to all. Next was original slide 11. Well,
Thank you,
fine,
Mr. Arata. That's 3 minutes.
Great, but I had something timed for 3 minutes before when you had an original slide deck that you've changed in the time since. I never saw the new slide deck, so we're trying to coordinate over here. I think I should.
And excuse me, please. Tell me how much more you have to go.
I think about a minute and a half.
Board?
Yeah.
All right,
Excuse me.
thank you.
Thank you.
With regard to gender support plans, my understanding is that California schools are generally not permitted to inform parents of a student's sudden assertion in school settings of an LGBTQ status, or in particular, a determination to undertake so-called gender transition without the student's permission, even if that child is a minor. So schools may not inform parents. And it's in that context that gender sexuality alliances, GSAs, originally in high schools and then moved into middle schools, are now endangering 4th and 5th graders with these PRISM clubs. These are ages 9 to 11, where kids are maximally insecure, trying to find their way in the world. They are too susceptible to inappropriate outside influences, such as the transgender display bulletin board and accompanying books in the nearby library at Rancho Romero in early 2018. That display came down as soon as it was publicized on the radio, and for a good reason. Someone is trying to take unscrupulous advantage of kids' plastic notions of sex and sexuality at these ages, and I'm guessing that at least in some cases, the personal predilections of adults are involved. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa Disbrow.
Give me 1 second. Gotta get something open on my phone. Pretty interesting, right? Okay. Good evening. My name's Lisa Disbrow. I've spoken here before. I'm a veteran teacher. I'm a bilingual, multicultural, bicultural, by something else, forget the next word, certificated teacher of 34 years in California. And I've been steeped in all of this multiculturalism, cultural relevancy. And I have done so much work and listened to so many expensive consultants over the decades. I just want to let you know that I think you deserve a new label. I think we should change letters to WSRV, Woke San Ramon Valley. I recently spoke with somebody very informed on the student population in Lafayette. They've had an 11% decline. I anticipate that your spring job search program will harm real estate in this area. Furthermore, I anticipate that you will have a much smaller student body population next year because of vaccine. I think that, and I just want to mention this is more for their information, the community at large. Every association within the education realm in California and practically nationwide is all woke. You guys didn't come to this. It was fed to you for decades and decades and decades.
Lisa, before you continue, can you pull up your mask over your
I
nose?
certainly
Thank you.
can. And I would make a request of you. When you speak, I would prefer you raise your hand. So when I'm sitting back there, I know who's speaking. It is very difficult. I want to mention, I'm a kindergarten teacher by passion. A is for activist. A is for activist. Now, I can give you every letter in the alphabet with a concrete object and a song that goes with it. Apple, ball, cat, doll. I can get to Z in a heartbeat. I want to read you. A is for activist. A is for activist, advocate, abolitionist, ally, actively answering a call to action. Are you an activist? And then I'll go to Z, not zoo, not zebra, not zipper. Z is for Zapatista.
Thank you, Ms.
course.
Disbrow. That's 3 minutes.
4 to 6 year olds being indoctrinated.
Thank you. That's 3 minutes.
Okay, that was the last card for item 9.2. So we're moving on to 9.3, which is public comment for non-agenda items. Okay, we want everyone to know that we value the input of the public, and we want to be sure that members of the public who wish to address the board have an opportunity to be heard. As a board, we also have the obligation to conduct the agendized business before us. In order to create balance, we'll allow 30 minutes for public comment on non-agendized items at the beginning of the meeting when that items appear on the agenda. If we need more time for non-agendized items, we will pause this portion of the agenda and we'll resume prior to administrative reports. Additionally, we will hear from speakers on topics that only have one speaker card prior to hearing from speakers on topics with multiple cards on the same topic. Public comment will be limited to no longer than 3 minutes, and the board cannot discuss any items not on the agenda for this meeting. The views expressed during the public comment are those of the individual speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the board or district staff. The district believes in an inclusive, welcoming, and safe environment for its meetings for all of our community. The board respects each individual's rights to express ideas and opinions. Pursuant to applicable law and board policy, the board will not prohibit public criticism of the board or district. We kindly ask that when making public comments, you refrain from use of profanity, exercise tolerance of others and their viewpoints, and exemplify model behavior. Please be mindful that the district students may be watching. You're encouraged to address the board in public in a respectful manner such that all those observing, from children to adults, are made to feel welcome, safe, and respected. The board will not permit any disturbance or willful interruption of board meetings. Persistent or excessive disruption by any individual or group shall be grounds to terminate the privilege of addressing the board. So the first public comment from 9.3 is Helen of Doherty Valley.
So I want to ask you some questions. Why is it that our students will become better learners if they are able to see teachers who look like them? I don't understand that. If that's the case, why do they bother immigrating to the United States? Don't they know that the United States are mostly diverse people and a majority of those are white people? And I also want to say something because it really bothers me these days, because do you guys know some Jewish people? You know, the Jewish people I meet in my life, they're actually white looking. For you guys to keep talking about like white supremacists and all that, don't you think sometimes you inadvertently put Jewish white people in danger? Because like Asian people can't tell. Like white people, they can't tell who are Chinese, Taiwanese, Japanese, Koreans. We can tell who are Jewish and who are, Eastern Europeans and who are, like the rednecks that you guys are trying to get. I don't understand your logic. And, I grew up when I didn't know I had a rich uncle who was very, very smart when I was 13. So that's why we were able to immigrate here, because he was a chemist and was hired by Water District in Southern California. Then he was able to make a living of himself by being an entrepreneur. And then he applied for my family with his assets, guaranteeing that we will not become a public burden. So the taxpayers don't have to pay for us if we should be financially dire. So I grew up in a area that is extremely white. And when I say white, half of those white people are Jewish people. And, I never felt that I was discriminated. And I was actually a very successful student. I don't understand. There is no science to what you're trying to say. I agree. We can agree on all students should be successful. I want our Black students to be successful. If I could, I'm willing to donate my time to share my ability, in certain areas to help them succeed. But I don't understand this hiring practice. What? you don't even like look at their resume, their background, just like, blindfolded, and then you can hire anyone? Really, just what the?
Mike Arata on 9.3.
I think we're all set. I too want to address the textbook once again, Stamped Racism, Anti-Racism and You, which urges seventh graders and others to check out Straight Outta Compton as a source of change and empowerment. You haven't acted on the printed copy of Depraved Lyrics I provided at the last meeting, so let's pretend that we're seventh graders and check out how your textbook recommendation sounds with segments from Straight Outta Compton.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Straight out of Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube. From the gang called niggas with attitudes.
Seventh graders.
I got a sawed off. Switch the check, everybody's on hard off. You too funny if you fuck with me. The police are gonna have to come and get me. Move your ass, that's how I'm going out. For the fuck motherfuckers that's showing out. Niggas from the mumble, they wanna rumble. Make some man cook them in a pot like gumbo. Going off on the motherfucker like that. With a gat, that's pointed at your ass. What's up? Tell them where you're from. Straight out of Compton. Another crazy ass nigga. One pose I smoke, yo, my rep gets bigger. I'm a bad motherfucker and you know this. But the pussy ass niggas won't show this. But I don't give a fuck, I'ma make my snap. If not for the records, I'm jacking across like burglary. The definition is jacking. But when I'm legally on, it's gon' pack it. Shoot a motherfucker and I'm in. I'm about to
be quiet,
piece of pussy and you're a minute. So if you have a show in the front row, I'ma call you a bitch or a dirty ass hoe. You probably get mad like a bitch is supposed to. But that show is like joke and close to a crazy motherfucker on the street. Attitude legit, cause I'm tearing up shit. But these niggas ruthless, never sing like a shadow in the dark. It's someone I know. You see a fucking like over hesitation. And here's a still of the one who got the last penetration.
That one's less audible, so we'll stop with that one there. Those are segments, and I have a sheet with those blocked off if you want to see what the intended elements were. So my question is, what in hell were you and are you thinking by adopting that book to begin with and continuing its use now? Indeed, hell, not seventh grade textbook recommendations, is the appropriate venue for this atrocity. Not only for its recommendation that kids check out the depraved filth you just heard as a source of change and empowerment, supposedly, but also because of the book's gross distortions and outright lies about American history. Glorifying gang culture, murder, rape, and general mayhem is something the district should be condemning, not promoting in a textbook. And so-called common sense media, your defective go-to 4-star endorsement source for this book and others, ought not to be trusted in such matters, quite obviously. As I said previously, you should do the right thing. Rescind your adoption of this rotten book and withdraw existing copies from classroom use. Thank you.
Okay, and then I have one more card under public comments from Marilyn Lucy, but she had to leave and ask us to read her comments on the back. Okay, she says, thank you for your efforts for equity and for reiterating that the work you are doing is indicated by current law. Thank you for being public servants who respect the law. Thank you for specifying the practices that you are evaluating, like diverse staff, which are based on research and are related to better outcomes for students who do not have teachers who look like them. Thank you for respecting research and the work done by those who spend time on this work. I know you are secure and smart enough to see beyond the rhetoric. I am a taxpayer and I support the work you do. a successful Nike, a successful international company, and other top corporations value diversity and know it makes them and this company most successful. Thank you. Okay, and that was the last card for public comment. Oh, was on the same card? I only got one card. Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine because you, okay. Yes, Zaid Perrin for 9.3.
First,
that.
I do want to say I am straight out of Compton, and that song and that book is my life. So don't tell me that it has anything to do with false history, because I'm the one that was slammed up on that police car. I'm the one that was shoved into the ground. I'm the one that lived through that. So don't tell me anything otherwise. It's a great book. It's a great movie. You know what? Life is profane, and with that can come profanity. When you are taught that that's how you speak so that you can be respected, that's how you do it. I had an education staff that allowed me to learn the English language so that I could come up to a level that I could speak to anyone. So I appreciate everything that you guys are doing in that. Okay. My point was this. My situation that I had with my daughter, October 29th, she was called the N-word. It was followed by a group chat where the same person once again called her the N-word, wrote it out. She came to me and asked me to bring it to the school. I sent it to the school. They responded in kind on the weekend, which was great. She went into school on Wednesday because it was over the vacation holiday. She hadn't been spoken to by 10:30. She started feeling ill. I had to go pick her up. I let the school know that I had to pick her up and that she was upset that no one had spoken to her. Thursday, she went directly into the vice principal's office. The vice principal handed her a document sheet and said, please write down the incident. She wrote down the incident. There was no apology. There was no empathy. There was no question as to how she was feeling. Directly after that, she texted me, sobbing, asking me to pick her up. I picked her up, came back into the school for a meeting with that same vice principal. Met with the vice principal. I asked her, do you know how many times this has happened to my daughter? No, I do not. Did you look? No, I did not. Did you ask her how she was feeling, how she felt about this situation? No, I did not. I apologize. I need to do better. That's how she responded. I then said, okay, what are my next steps? Because this can't go further. She said, you need to speak to the principal. And then after that, if you don't come to resolution, you need to speak to the board. Went to the principal's office with my daughter next to me. She was in a meeting. I asked the assistant to put us down for an appointment. Didn't care when it was. I'll change all my plans. I have not heard from her. My daughter sent an email to her on November 9th. This is the Tuesday after. She said, I'm emailing because I'm highly confused and worried about why actions haven't been taken regarding the past 2 racial incidents that have happened to me. I don't understand why no one has reached out to me. I
Thank
don't
you,
feel
Mr.
safe
Perrin.
at school.
I'm sorry, it's 3 minutes, but we're happy to have someone reach out to you. May we do that?
Yes, because my daughter hasn't been back to school. She fears school. And-
I'm sorry, it's
and she
3
loves school.
minutes and that's our policy. I'm so sorry.
So that you know, the principal wrote my daughter back. And she didn't know what the meeting with the vice principal entailed at all. And I still don't have an appointment with the principal. This day.
President Ordway, may I make a comment, even though I know it's not agenda?
Oh.
On behalf of us, the staff, not the board, I'm very sorry that that happened. Executive Director John Campopiano is in the back of the room, who oversees all of our secondary schools. I would ask that you connect with him, please, before you go, or John, you can connect somehow tomorrow, because that cannot be tolerated. We need to get to the bottom of it, And again, I apologize that that was the experience. It is the exact opposite of what we are expecting, and we need to be accountable. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Okay, Matthew Hoffman.
I'd like to yield all my time to the previous gentleman.
I'm sorry. I understand your, Mr. Hoffman. Thank you so much for offering that, but that's not an option.
What would you like to say? I'll just repeat it. Starting where I said. Dear Camille, thank you for your email. I'm happy to discuss the investigation process to hopefully answer any questions you may have. We received the initial email from your father on Sunday, October 30th, and upon his return to school on Wednesday, November 3rd, Ms. Chaplin sent a pass for you so she could begin the investigation. Unfortunately, you were not feeling well and had to go home prior to speaking with her. I see that you did not speak with Ms. Chaplin on November 4th and that your father met with her on Friday, November 5th. The safety and well-being of all our students is the #1 priority. When this has been violated, our administration conducts an investigation following California Educational Code, which outlines when disciplinary action can be taken by the school. Once our investigation is complete, we cannot disclose any disciplinary action and/or disciplinary consequence for any student to anyone other than their parent guardian. As a result, it may not seem like any action has been taken when in fact it has. I can assure you that the incident you or your father brought to our attention was taken seriously and fully investigated. I am sorry that you do not feel supported, as I know that your team cares about you and is invested in your well-being and success. I will follow up with them so that we can schedule a meeting upon your return to ensure a smooth re-entry and address any concerns that you may have. Take care.
So I would just note in the last minute, if you can find any empathy in that statement, an email that was sent to my daughter and not to me, then please show it to me. Show me where empathy and caring for my child is evident in that. And why does she talk about her own team in the third party? She has no ownership of that school, of that team, or the advocacy for my child, or for her safety. That's despicable.
We need better people. We need a lot more better people than what we have.
Okay, we're moving on to 10.0. That was the last public comment card. Sorry, 9.4, yes. Association presidents reports. So, yes, Tammy.
Good evening. I'm Tammy Castelluccio. I'm the president of California School Employees Association, and I represent our classified clerical, technical, child nutrition, and paraprofessional units in our district. First, I would like to congratulate Danny Hillman, our new CBO. I'm looking forward to working with Danny in his new role. I would also like to acknowledge Greg Medici and wish him well in his new endeavor, as well as thank him for being a great partner with CSEA and working all these years. You will be missed, Greg. I would also like to congratulate SRVUSD on reaching tentative agreement with management in record-setting time. It speaks volumes to the new leadership of SRVUSD. I would like to congratulate Laura Finko and the SRVUSD negotiations team on a job well done. CSEA and management have almost finalized our long negotiations process of the EMS class and comp study we started in 2019. We work collaboratively and put to the point where we're almost ready to sign the MOU and go through the ratification process. We would like to thank management for embarking on this difficult journey with us and the hard work we've all done to complete this process. We will also hopefully be ready to sunshine our reopeners for this year in December. And I would also like to thank all of the classified employees. We realize that this school year has not been easy, but appreciate your hard work and dedication to our students. Wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving and a well-deserved break. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Laura Finco, and I am the president of the San Ramon Valley Education Association, representing the over 1,700 non-managerial certificated personnel here in this district. My pronouns are he, are she, hers, and her. Guys do this to me every single time because what I want to come up here and actually talk about, I end up winging it. And I just want to share. So Hong, you know, the board knows. As a openly gay teacher, I think one of the biggest things that have happened to me in my experience of working in the classroom for over 34 years is when I have a student who identifies as LGBTQ, even if it's years later, coming up to me and telling me how important it was to them to be able to see themselves in a teacher in their classroom. They've shared with me that my strength of character and what I was able to do as an openly gay teacher was inspirational to them, helped them, and at times even has saved lives. So it does matter. Our students do need to see themselves in the adults that they work with. With that said, Tammy, thank you for the congratulations on the 4 sessions. We have finished the ratification process, and I am pleased to announce that the SRVUSD members have approved all matters, articles, and MOUs with high percentages. Our student-focused negotiations over the years, this has been very important to me, both as a SRVUSD leader, particularly as bargaining chair. We've always said that SRVUSD and our negotiations, and that includes our negotiations with our labor partners, so I'm including you in this, are student-centered. When we say hashtag for our students, it's not just lip service, it really is about our kids. And we started our Support Our Students campaign with our Monday mentionings and other social media outreach, basically indicating 3 pillars that we focused on over the years. And I want to congratulate not only the SRVUSD members for standing up for what they believed in, but also for our management partners for also understanding why this has been so important to us. Because we've always said that our students deserve the best class sizes. And you helped us negotiate the new class size article a few years ago that gave us better caseloads and better ratios and better class sizes for our kids. Can we do better? Yes. But we move forward with understanding that our kids do better when we were able to have smaller classes, where we're able to have better relationships. Particularly, this has been very apparent during COVID. We also said that our students deserve the best supports. And we've been able to negotiate over the years better ratios, nurses, social workers, school psychologists, bringing those in and forefront of our classrooms into our schools. My gosh, we have elementary counselors. It's amazing. Those are the supports our kids need. But that 3rd pillar, that our students also deserve the best educators possible. And that's what one of our focuses was on this year, being able to attract and retain the highest quality educators. I was reading in the patch today a parent comment, and I just want to take a moment to quote, "It is foolish to speak against salary increases and not realize that these too are student-focused. Just take a look at Dublin Unified School District and you'll see why they are needed, why we needed to negotiate for salaries. DUSD got a huge bump in healthcare coverage, higher starting wages, salary increases, and we've lost several incredible teachers, including my kid's beloved Alamo elementary teacher, a man, which is a rare commodity, to Dublin Unified School District. I, for one, am thrilled with the salary settlements. Thank goodness our teachers are being paid at least a bit of what they're worth." I'm grateful for that because I personally do not want to see our teachers moving over to Dublin. I love Dublin. That's where I grew up. But I know that we need to be able to have competitive salaries. And I believe that what we've been able to successfully negotiate and what we recently ratified is a step in the right direction for that. So again, we're very grateful that our labor partners were able to work with us in keeping our focus on our students. When we work together, we can move mountains, and sometimes we can even change hearts and minds. Finally, I'm also very grateful for the announcement tonight on the number of educators who are moving from temporary status to probationary, and in some cases from temporary to permanent status. Having the security is not only personally important, but professionally providing the ability to focus on our students and not about whether or not they have a place to work. We're hopeful that now, as we look towards our upcoming successor agreement, our joint efforts to put our students first will help move us forward. So thank you all. Mahalo.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Next, we have our student board members report. On it. Oh, sorry, Ron. Hold that. Just got a yellow card. Okay, Helen.
Miss Finko, I think you are a good teacher. I can tell from your personality that you must be a very charismatic person. So I wouldn't mind that if you taught my student. As a matter of fact, I have a student who was taught by a gay teacher, art teacher at Charlotte Wood. And I think he did a great job. But as a parent, what I don't understand is why is it that we have to hire someone based on their behavior or their characteristics and not on their competence on the subject matter? That's what I don't understand as a parent. If we can understand that there are diversities, there are gay people, there are straight people, there are Asian people, there are Black people, there are Latino people, and there are Native people. And all these people can possibly possess great competence in how they can teach our students. I am all for it. However, the way you guys present diversity hiring right now is very scary. You don't talk about their competence in their subject matter. All you talk about is just their behavior, their preference. So as a parent, what am I thinking? When I send my kids to school, they're just going to be learning about sex all day. I want to share something with you. When I was young, I was actually aspired
Excuse me,
to
Helen?
be.
You need to stay on topic, and the topic was related to Ms. Finko's report, and you're talking right now about diversity in hiring.
But it is because she mentioned about the probation, temporary to probationary and all that, that involves staff.
Yes, but you're talking about the hiring, so let's stay on topic.
Okay, so I am right? I'm talking about hiring, the teacher qualification for hiring. That's what I've been addressing. I'm not sure why I'm off topic. But then, of course, it's okay. You're always right. I'm always wrong. Why don't I just shut up? Thank you.
Okay, Ronette, student board members report.
Thank you. So, in the past few weeks since our last board meeting, there have been relatively few developments, and that is partially due to a couple of 4-day weekends, which students have been able to enjoy recently, which has resulted in a little bit of a break from school. However, with that in mind, people are still getting into more of a rhythm regarding school. With various tasks, whether it's finding a way to get lunch at school with the free meal lunch option that is provided by the district, or whether they're bringing lunch from home or finding external means to do that. Getting to school on time, leaving, and really being involved in their classroom environment. Apart from that, clubs and leadership are also becoming more and more active with various meeting, events, and activities such as football games for high schools, school dances for middle schoolers, and many other things of the sort have really started to gain a lot of traction and are seeing a lot of involvement from a vast majority of the school community, which is very encouraging. So in contrast to a couple of the past board meetings where I have talked about students trying to get used to this relatively new sort of normal with the in-person environment. It's sort of progressing into more of the traditional sorts of activities which students are used to experiencing while they are at school. So as the semester progresses, grades are also coming into a limelight rather than that focus of getting used to the classes and to the school environment. So with the grading systems, there is a little bit of increased student stress regarding some of those topics, whether it involves AP classes and honors classes at the high school level, or whether it involves a couple of other difficult classes at the middle school level. So there are a couple of discussions that a lot of students want to have around grading policies and making sure that they are fair and equitable across all grade levels. And we are going to work as a Senate to understand exactly what that might look like before necessarily proposing some sort of tangible change. However, within the Student Senate and within a variety of other student groups, we have been moving along steadily. So with the Senate, as you know, there are various smaller umbrella groups which are working on their own initiatives. And there's a newsletter for this month and for the month of December, which is coming up, which will be publicly available for the community to keep up with the work of all of these groups. However, just at the broader level to give some insight into that. We have groups working on videos to combat bullying, raise awareness about systems like the Care Line system, which will allow administrators and peers to really step in during dangerous situations that they're seeing on campus and trying to prevent those. And then also continuing on along our work with Schoology, just with the use and understanding among students and among parents who are really just making sure that they're well acquainted with the system. One quite recent development is the implementation of some protective management measures with the use of technology at school. And since a lot of these are relatively new and students don't have a deep understanding of it yet, and it's kind of just getting rolled out, at the next Student Senate meeting, we will be inviting people from the district technology department, including Greg Pitzer and Kelly Hilton, to make sure that this process is as seamless as possible. And we're understanding exactly what's going on at the student end while they're trying to adapt to some of these new things being integrated into their standard working procedure. Just trying to make sure that classroom activities, clubs, and other student groups which do operate on campus are not being impeded by any new measures which are implemented there. So apart from that, students at each middle school and high school can now easily reach out to their student senators via email as well. The emails for those senators would be available on the district website. And just for general reference, in the form of the first two letters being the school initials. So for example, for Monte Vista, it would be MV. For Cal High, it would be CH. And then student senate at students.srvusd.net. So that'll be a way for students who are experiencing difficult situations on campus or simply want their opinions to be heard on a little bit of a broader level to be able to communicate with those senators who can then bring forth some of those opinions to me or refer some of those people who are reaching them directly to me as well, just so that I'm making sure to gain this holistic opinion and to have the true overall perspective of what's going on across all of our sites. So I really think that that is going to be something that will allow me to work along that mission and to make sure that everybody's being heard. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, 10.0 for action items. So 10.1, consideration of adoption of resolution 40/2122, approval of provisional internship permit or PIP requests. I think we've seen this before. Yeah.
President Ordway, we're seeing them almost every single board meeting this year, unfortunately. So we are looking to hire one teacher under what we call a PIP, and that is a middle school teacher at Stone Valley Middle School. But in order to do that, we need approval of this board resolution. So we recommend approval as presented.
So moved.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Bratt and seconded by Board Member Clark. Call out vote. Student Board Member Bacha.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, great. 10.2, consideration of approval of revision to board policy and administrative regulation 5145.3 and 5145.7.
Thank you again, President Ordway. As the board recalls, these two policies and administrative regulations were sunshined for informational purposes and as a first reading on October 26th. We are revising these policies so that they are fully in alignment with existing current law and current applicable regulations. They are based upon CSBA templates, and they were actually crafted from them. We've also drafted this in consultation with district legal counsel. Okay, we recommend approval again as presented. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a public comment card for this, Helen.
Board members, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Roginski. He spent about an hour with me, over half an hour over the phone, half an hour in person to explain to me what these language, the codes mean. I just want to share with you that from a parent's perspective, who is conservative, who is a Trumper, who is a Christian, I fear that these languages can possibly become excuses to really put my student in manufactured situation for suspension or for, discipline. Let me give you an example. One of the languages says it would be a sexual harassment if you touch someone's clothing sexually. I don't understand that. Please, you need to teach me what that means so I can teach my students. I don't know what is it that in my ancestry or my culture that is feasible. Then in your eyes, it becomes like touching clothing becomes a sexual harassment. I don't understand. And then also I'm concerned about the language that it says, you guys have the jurisdiction to investigate and punish via suspension and expulsion for off-site, off-hours incidents. I strongly disagree with that. As an American, I know my right. Your jurisdiction is on your site. For example, SRPD cannot cite somebody in Danville, vice versa. In your school, you are the jurisdiction, but off campus, it is the peace officer of that municipality's jurisdiction. You are illegally overstepping into something that is their jurisdiction, and then you use it as an excuse to possibly incriminate someone politically disagreeing with you, just like what you guys have been doing to me all night long. I'm the only person who is told to shut up or, whatever I say is never right. Imagine I'm an adult. You're treating me this way. How can I fear every day how my student can possibly be treated. Not that I don't have respect for you guys. I have a lot of respect for all kinds of people. It's actually, I'm afraid that, do you guys respect me? Do you guys respect my student? I know a case, that the student was investigated for an acronym that is unnatural in his family, but then the person who sent him a homosexual video was not investigated. I am asking you to please give me one more month to hash out languages that is equitable and fair for all. So please do not approve today. I beg of you to please give me one more month. In December, if you want to approve, you approve. If you want to disapprove, you disapprove. But please give me a chance to hash out some more languages in terms of evidence that is more equitable for all. Thank you. Please consider that.
So Assistant Superintendent Roginski, as I understand it, this policy and adoption, it's law, right? And it's the language and things like that too.
Yes, and actually, as one reads through the policies and administrative regulations, you'll see that oftentimes threaded throughout the document are actual education code citations, which is essentially the law that supports the inclusion of those statements. And at the end, oftentimes there's several lines, if not several pages, of various state and federal citations, case law, et cetera, that support the contents of those board policies and administrative regulations. So it's our understanding, belief, and we are extremely confident about the fact that everything that we have included here is consistent with the law.
Okay.
Move approval.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Mintz and seconded by Board Member Clark. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, now 10.3, public hearing for the proposed educator effectiveness block grant plan, EEF. So I think this is actually a public hearing for that, so I have to gavel in, open public hearing. And I think our executive director, Deb Pettish, is.
Good evening, trustees. Excuse me. I come with some good news this evening. SRVUSD received something called the Educator Effectiveness Grant. And we just got information a couple of weeks ago that we did receive this. Essentially, we are going to be receiving approximately $6.5 million in order to support our staff and engaging in professional development. And when I say staff, I of course mean certificated staff, such as administrators, teachers, counselors, nurses, but also classified staff who also play such a pivotal role in the classroom. So our paras, our instructional assistants, our bus drivers, our the food staff workers. So we're really, really excited. We will be getting the money this year, of course, 21-22, and it will last us through 25-26. So one of the reasons why we're so excited about this opportunity is because it really provides us with really additional support in order to meet our strategic directions, particularly with regard to equity, social emotional well-being, and deep learning and innovation. And I want to point out on the next slide, I have some examples. I did summarize, of course, in the board packet, what an approximate budget is for this particular grant money, but some of it will, of course, be district-led. So as Hong said today, and I said a couple weeks ago when we talked about deep learning, it's really important for us to create the conditions for our sites to be able to really engage in this work. So some of the professional learning will be district-led and some will be site-led so that we provide support resources to the sites in order to engage in what they feel their staff needs at that particular time in order to meet their strategic direction goals. So of course, we've been working this year with the principals on cycles of improvement, and what an Alamo Elementary might need is a bit different maybe than what a Doherty Valley High School will need. So some of it will be given to the sites for them to be able to make the best decisions. So some of the things that I put in our board packet that we anticipate spending this money on, first are learning partnerships, which has been really key to our understanding this year, deepening our understanding of deep learning and innovation. We talked about the global partnership at my last presentation, New Pedagogies for Deep Learning, which is an international organization that is supporting us by partnering with us on really understanding deep learning and innovation. Hong, in her excellent presentation, talked about essentially equitable, inclusive practices. So how are we really ensuring that the classroom feels safe to all of our students? Suicide prevention. So we, of course, earmarked some money for social emotional well-being in terms of things like suicide prevention for our students, trauma-informed practices, activities such as that to really support our staff in understanding how to work with a range of students. I mentioned deep learning earlier, and I think this will really provide us with an opportunity to dig in a little bit deeper into deep learning. Transitional kindergarten. So over time in our expansion of that, and our teachers really having to support younger students as they come in, we want to make sure that we provide professional learning for them. And then finally, ethnic studies. So that became of course, a graduation requirement, and we want to make sure that we're supporting our teachers and really understanding how to teach ethnic studies most effectively. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And then I have a public comment for this hearing. Helen?
I am really offended of the way that I'm treated. You have been discriminating me all day long, all night long. It really offends me when you say that all the learning is for all students. Please, no, you don't mean that. What you mean is all students less Taiwanese American families. We don't mean anything. We're like the worst. We're like garbage to you. The way you treat me will be picked up by administrators, teachers at site. They will feel that they can go ahead and discriminate and, just do whatever they want. With my student, it's okay. Nobody of you, just look at the way you guys treat me. Who is going to be standing on my student's side? You guys are hypocrites and liars.
So now I'm gobbling out and closing the public hearing for the block grant. 10.4, public hearing for joint initial proposal for labor negotiations between the San Ramon Valley Unified School District and the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, Local 1021 for a 2021-2022 successor contract. Thank you. Open public hearing. And then is there any public comment? Nope. Okay, I'm closing public hearing. Moving on to 10.5, which is consideration of acceptance of the joint initial proposal for labor negotiations between the San Ramon Valley Unified School District and the Service Employees International Union, SEIU Local 1021 for 2021 to 2024, 2024 successor contract. Okay, Assistant Superintendent Keith Rodzinski.
Thank you, President Ordway. So as the board can see, the SEIU and the district created a joint proposal. We discussed jointly the articles of the existing collective bargaining agreement that we are interested in reopening and having discussions about at the bargaining table, for a successor contract for the next 3 years. SEIU is currently working expired contract. It expired on June 30th of 2021. We've identified 6 different articles plus the appendices that we would like to have conversation and discussion about. And we are asking this evening, this is a public sunshine to notify the trustees as well as the public what it is we are planning to talk about once we get to the bargaining table. So we ask respectfully that the trustees accept the joint proposal as it's presented this evening. Following that acceptance, we will sit down with SEIU and we will start calendaring negotiations dates. Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
I'll move approval of acceptance of the joint initial proposal.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Mintz. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, great. Now we're going to move on to, there's a 10.6, which was 12.1, consideration of approval of certificated personnel changes. I think it was pulled by Helen.
So board, the reason why I pull this item is because I'm wondering, the 5 resignations that were listed, were they due to vaccines or were they due to relocations? I'm wondering how much of the Biden vaccine mandate is affecting our staffing. Also, there was a section that was about temporary employment. I'm wondering if they're hired on emergency credentials because there were temporary, probationary, and then this is just straight temporary. So if these, I remember I read somewhere that there's no longer emergency, that they should be internships. So I would like to know if temporary employment means that they are less qualified in some way. What defines that? Thank you.
I'm happy to answer those questions. So we are not aware that any of the 5 individuals who are listed in the first section of the certificated personnel changes has resigned as a result of the vaccination mandate. Sitting here before you this evening, I'm not aware of any specific employees in the school district, certificated or classified, who have resigned for that reason. Okay. And then with regards to a temporary contract, so a temporary contract, it's important to understand that the status of a teacher as temporary does not necessarily correspond to the type of certificate that they hold from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Any teacher that we hire, for instance, under a contract waiver, I don't believe we have one in the district at this point, I'm sorry, under a credential waiver, or any teacher that we hire under a specific emergency type of permit, such as a PIP, we're required to bring before you and actually have you act upon publicly. Okay, so all of the individuals who are listed as being contracted as temporary employees, it just essentially means that their employment with the district is defined for a specific period of time with a specifically identified beginning and an ending date. That's really all it means. Most of those individuals, the overwhelming percentage of those individuals who are contracted as certificated temporary employees are either fully credentialed or they are working under intern permits because they're in the process of completing their credentials, or they've been approved by you to be hired under the PIP, which is kind of the equivalent of the emergency certificate. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Hey, Keith. One other thing, just looking at this list here, I can tell by looking at the FTE allocation on this that the vast majority of the FTEs here are related to one class. So more than likely, this is related to a teacher, full-time teacher at high school teaches 5 classes, for instance. If they decide and opt to take another class and teach 120%, that 20% that they're over would be listed here as a temporary contract because it ends at the end of the year with, as Keith said, a defined beginning and a defined end. The majority of these less than 1.0 FTEs are probably that.
Thank you, Danny. And that stands to reason because no individual employee can have rights to any more than full-time employment. And full-time employment, for instance, at the high school is a 5-period per day teaching schedule. So if a teacher takes on an additional assignment, by virtue of necessity, that additional assignment, point 2, must be temporary. Thanks, Danny.
Okay, thank you. Got the motion?
I'll second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Bratt. Call out vote. Student Board Member Bacha.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ray.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, and 10.7, consideration of approval of classified personnel changes. Helen?
So under this item, I saw that there are 2 classified employees separations, and I'm assuming that wording is equivalent to resignation. Are they due to vaccination? Thank you.
And just to follow up on the comment that I made on the previous item, we are not aware that any of these individuals has resigned his or her employment due to vaccination requirements.
Okay, thank you. I have the motion for that one.
So moved.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Bratt and seconded by Board Member Hurd. Call out vote. Student Board Member Bacha.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz?
Aye.
Board Member Ordway?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, next is 10.8, used to be 12.4. Consideration of adoption of resolution number 41/2122 approving routine budget revisions. Helen?
So under this item, I saw that there was a amount of $2,916,282 listed as transfer out recently. I'm wondering if that means that those are students that belong to our school district but left us. And that is a very large sum of money that we're losing. I'm wondering how many in student number does that equal to? Thank you.
So
Yeah.
the transfers out on the monthly, and this actually dates back all the way to the 45-day revise. If you go back and look at a board packet from August, you would see that this $2.9 million number is sitting there. This has nothing to do with students. This has to do with the dollar amount that we have to pay for the solar debt that gets transferred out of this account to a different account so that we can pay that financing. So this is something that was earmarked at the very beginning of the school year. If you look at, I think it's page 94 of the board packet, it says revised budget amount 930 was last month. There's no adjustment to this item. It's the same dollar amount as pegged at the beginning of adopted budget. So there's no adjustment here. It's just for the solar debt.
So move adoption of resolution 41/2122.
Second.
Motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Mintz. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra?
Aye.
Board Member Clark?
Aye.
Board Member Bratt?
Aye.
Board Member Hurd?
Aye.
Board Member Mintz?
Aye.
Board Member Ordway?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, next, it's 10.9, was 12.7, declaration of surplus instructional materials.
So under this agenda item, I read that there are many books that were marked obsolete. I'm wondering what is the procedural process for the district if textbooks previously purchased are marked obsolete? Is it possible that the public is able to come to the school district and buy those obsolete books? Thank you.
So, yeah, either Danny or Christine.
I can speak more generally to obsolete or surplus materials, which essentially this is what is covered here. There are some rules that I'm aware of when it comes to, I'll give a different example. If we were to receive money from the state for a particular grant, let's say career technical education, and it was for an automotive program, and we bought car equipment, tools, lifts, things like that. Before surplusing those items, if they were still valid and good and in good repair and we could use them, but we don't have a program any longer, the state would want us to offer that to other automotive programs in high schools or something like that. When it comes to textbooks, Deb Pettish is actually the expert on this more so than I am. But with regard to all surplus items, there is a point in the life cycle of the item that it is no longer useful for various reasons. Textbooks have a slightly different litmus test than, say, a maintenance truck or a desk or things like that. So there might be some things that with instructional materials where there is a new item that has been adopted that supersedes the old item. The old item is no longer needed. And this is an incredibly labor-intensive process to go through our inventory and figure out what we still have that we don't really need to keep any longer. And I can tell you that normally we do this on a pretty regular clip, and we didn't do it during the year of COVID for obvious reasons. People weren't really on site. So that being said, where we can resell things, we will do so. Where we can offer things to other public agencies like us, we do that. In large part, when it comes to instruction materials including textbooks, being labeled as surplus, it's probably because they aren't relevant any longer. They're out of date, or they have been superseded by something new. That's very generally the way that the process works.
Great, thank you.
So specifically, there's like a hierarchy of giving them away to other entities, and then I guess before they went in the garbage can, would there be an opportunity for someone, a member of the public, to come look at them? I mean, is that even worthwhile? Have we ever entertained it? I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying, have we ever considered that?
I'm not aware, but I also haven't asked the question. So we can look into that when it comes to textbooks. We do have with surplus property, if it has a value, our purchasing department and the business office will go through and actually do a public auction. There's auction sites that do that very thing. We do it from time to time with tangible things that still have a life that we don't need any longer. And that's why anything that's surplus comes to you first. Because all of our items in our district were purchased with public dollars, we have to go through this process before we can do anything with it on that hierarchy.
So I guess if someone looked at the list and was particularly interested in an item, they could reach out to the curriculum. I mean, I'm assuming it was a book because that was the example that they could inquire.
Certainly.
It's just trying to address Helen's question.
But I'd also suspect that there's, rules that we have to follow relative to gift of public funds that have actually paid for these things. So how we dispose of them, like you say, there is a hierarchy involved.
Okay, can I have a motion?
Move approval.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Board Member Mintz and seconded by Board Member Bratt. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, and one more item, 10.10, was 12.10, consideration of approval of the 2021-2022 revised instructional calendar and 2021-2022 revised SR infant toddler program sites instructional calendar, and it's Laura.
Yeah, I just pulled that just to make sure that we take this, or I'd like for us to take this opportunity to clarify why we're making this change so that our community understands, because it is a shift, a very soon shift in the calendar.
Thank you, Trustee Bratt. So the reason that we are making this change is because typically we know that the first semester ends just before the winter break. And all of our secondary teachers are required to calculate grades and report those grades literally upon their return from the winter break. We have built in a floating workday as the first day right after the traditional 2-week winter break for quite some time. That was missed when this calendar was developed a couple of years ago. And so we had conversation with our certificated bargaining unit leadership at the beginning of the year about that and about it being expressed as a concern. We recognized it was a concern as well. So we had conversation with our classified bargaining units about it. And we found that we could make the change pretty easily by just switching a floating workday that was scheduled for Friday, the 11th of March with Monday, January 10th. So we essentially flipped those 2 days. We effectively lengthened for students the winter break by 1 day. We provided the option and flexibility for secondary teachers who want to come on in or spend that day calculating grades and turning them in to do so. And we have not changed the length of either the fall or the spring semester or the total amount of instructional time in the calendar this year. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I would just request that we make sure that we quickly and effectively communicate that to the community, because it does affect, daycare and various things for our parents. So
It's one of the notes that you just saw me writing to have conversation with the communications department about, to get out to all employees and all parents and families ASAP.
Great. And
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Bratt. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
We're now on to 11.0, an informational item, and it is strategies for supporting students. Dr. Malloy.
Thank you, President Ordway. I see that Director Dave Kravitz is making his way to the front of the room. He will be the lead on this important report. I'll just introduce it by saying that we have shared with you that one of the challenges that we have encountered, we predicted it and we're certainly experiencing it, is that our kids who were away from our campuses for quite some time, some are having challenges that we're needing to support. We're grateful to additional staff that we were able to provide, especially to our elementary schools, at least for a period of time, hopefully longer, but we'll certainly work through that as we go forward to provide emotional support as well. The intent of this presentation is to speak to the realities, to speak to the strategies we're using, and to speak to some of the legal challenges, as well as balancing perspectives that are part of this really important work that Dave will spend a little bit more time going into depth about.
Thank you, Dr. Malloy, board members, district staff. I appreciate the opportunity to provide a brief update around the work, as Dr. Malloy said, in regards to strategies for supporting students. First, I'd like to commend all of our staff, especially at the school sites, from our classified staff members to our counselors, to our teachers, to our administrators, our social workers, at the secondary sites and our wellness rooms. A lot of hard work has been put into this year, as with every year, but especially this year, with some of the challenges that we have predicted we'd be facing this school year, and many of which have come to fruition. But really about this presentation, it's about the supports that district staff and site staff have put together to help our students' social emotional well-being. If you're like me this summer, especially early this summer, we expected a different type of school year this year. That changed quickly. The good news is, if you go to any of our school sites and walk into any of our classrooms, you're going to see some very strong and effective teaching and, more importantly, learning going on. Some great things are happening at our campuses. That being said, we all have lived through a very traumatic time period in which the way we've done school traditionally for decades has changed. Being away for 18 months and transitioning back in hybrid last year and then full in-person this year has been challenging for many of our staff, but as importantly, for many of our students as well. So a few items that you see listed here is teaching students how to learn and relearn how to do school and the important community. We all realize that, especially at the lower grade levels, many of our students have never even stepped foot onto one of our campuses. And then they had a year lost when now they may be in first grade, they never were on campus as a kindergartner. And we don't want to lose sight of the fact that many of our other students that transition from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school missed out on that initial 6th grade year or 9th grade year. So our staff has been working with those students to help them transition in many different ways so that they can become better connected to our communities at each of our 36 school sites. Difficulty with social interactions. We all realize that for a year and a half, we were interacting, many of us were interacting, and all of us at some point through a screen. And we all know how effective that can be, and also some of the pitfalls in only communicating through a screen. So coming back onto campus and being around 24 or 36 or 500 or 3,000 students can be a challenge for our students, and we recognize that. So we're trying to address all of these concerns, slower to develop communication skills. And what that really is about is teaching our kids how to advocate for themselves. That's what we always want. We do it at the high school level, we do it at the elementary level, and of course at the middle school level as well. And then other concerns and challenges that some of our students face in regards to self-regulation and self-control. Many of these behaviors are manifesting themselves in the classroom or at lunch or at brunch or during recess. And when we see those things happening, our staff does a great job in trying to address and trying to teach or reteach our students how to behave properly so that all of our students feel safe and secure. Because we all know and understand when a student feels safe and secure coming to school each and every day, they have a better opportunity to learn. And that's what we're here for. The next two slides lists many of the supports that we have throughout the district or at the school sites. And it's not an exhaustive list. We're very excited about hiring 11 elementary school counselors this year, in which each counselor works at 2 different elementary school sites. We've been focusing on that work in many different ways because they're new to our school district, and they've been doing phenomenal work. In fact, as soon as they got to campus, as soon as they started to put out referral forms to staff members, many of our elementary counselors were already working very hard with a full load of students to work with, either individually or in small groups or large group instruction. Obviously, our secondary counselors have been doing fantastic work for years on our sites, primarily focusing on at the middle and high school level with academic advisement and counseling. However, over the years, they have been doing more and more social and emotional wellness advising. Our student support team process, or excuse me, our social emotional well-being screeners, we implemented a few of those last year, and we did so again this fall, and we continue to research and develop more screeners so that we can determine what students need, what students are in the greatest need, so that we can provide the services and supports to address those needs. We have a student support team process that's at all of our campuses, K through 12, to provide support for students in need, as well as at the elementary level, our rainbow rooms. At the high school, at the comprehensive high school level, all 4 high schools have our wellness rooms, or wellness centers, they're commonly called, which are doing great work with a classified staff member and a social worker, as well as other staff members supporting students who either drop in or come in for specific supports. We're very fortunate to partner with the Discovery Center in Danville year in and year out, and they provide us SCIP counselors, school counseling and intervention program interns that work at all 36 of our school sites. Social emotional supports and interventions provided by the school site, supported by the school district staff, have been implemented. Our social workers do a fantastic job working with our students, some of which are students and families of greatest need. And we have grown the amount of social workers over the years, and I am fortunate to work with them, and I really do appreciate how they advocate so strongly for our families in the greatest needs. SUBS is a program, Speak Up and Be Safe, which is an age-appropriate presentation and curriculum around identifying signs of abuse for 2nd, 4th, and 6th grades. Our California Healthy Kids Survey, we use year in and year out to identify needs of students and of communities, as well as our TUPE programs for vaping and smoking. So to prevent recidivism in regards to students vaping or smoking on campus, we have alternatives to suspensions, which is within the TUPE program. And that's a constant, not vaping and smoking, it happens, but it's a constant support area for our staff and supporting our students. This list is brief here, but really it's a long list of things that are happening at our school sites. So site-specific responses. We have social emotional teams at each of our school sites. We have supports across classrooms, whether it be grade level or all grades within a school site. At the elementary level, our curriculum is Sanford Harmony that addresses social emotional well-being. Our site has been learning over the years how to implement trauma-informed practices. Also, site-based positive progressive behavior support plans are in play at all of our school sites, as well as at our secondary sites, using our access periods to provide opportunities for small group instruction for students that are identified or are asking for certain supports by staff members, whether it be a teaching staff or counseling staff. When behaviors reach the level, unfortunately, sometimes they do, in which an administrator, a school administrator needs to address that behavior, there are certain things that we always take into consideration. So on this slide here with further reflections, whenever a situation does arise, our administrators are trained to handle these situations with many different factors, but these 3 items here are some of those governing factors, if you will. So we always have to consider significant legislation that governs discipline issues that comes from us, from the California Department of Education. We always want to manage privacy issues for the parties concerned, okay? Any student that may have behaved inappropriately and any students that may have been harmed by that behavior. And as always, there are strategies around and how it's implemented by administrators to balance the needs and develop the supports for the students who may have been harmed or may have witnessed an event that occurred, as well as the supports needed for the students who unfortunately misbehaved in that particular situation. So these are all things that we're doing. And again, I appreciate the opportunity. I know it's a very brief report, but these are all things that are happening at our school sites in which our staff is responding. It's been a challenging year, and we've only been here for 3 months. But again, I'd like to commend all of our staff, and that includes our district staff that is supporting all of our school sites in this work. So I appreciate your time. Happy to answer any questions that I can answer, and if I cannot answer them, then maybe some of my colleagues can assist. But thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Dave. And if I can just add one comment, because we are bringing a report forward that speaks to social emotional well-being aligned with all of the pieces of our strategic direction. But the purpose of Dave's work and frankly, Dave, you do a great job leading it, and you reflect the work of a lot of leaders that are here and are also at our school sites. But the purpose of bringing this forward today is because we have had some circumstances on some of our school sites that are pretty intense. We have heard from parents about what are we doing. We wanted you to know and understand kind of some of the realities of it, specific to what Dave shared, and also some of the challenges as we support and work with and intervene all who are involved in this situation, and that we will bring more information to you through that broader report. But this was just something that, because it is percolating, and we have heard from our families, some families, and we wanted you to be able to engage it with us as well.
Just a question. Are you finding that this is kind of like district-wide, or is it, like certain grades, or how prevalent is it?
Good question. It's, from my experience and visiting campuses, speaking to teachers, speaking to administrators and so on, it's across the district. Also, talking to my peers and my colleagues that are in my same position, student services at other school districts around the Bay Area, it's everywhere. Now, the actual frequency of it is, it depends on how you view it. It's real, it's happening, and we have a wide range, okay? When I say a wide range of different types of behaviors. Behaviors that are similar to what we had pre-COVID. But layer on top of that, the challenge of coming back to school in person. And if your experience as a family, as a student, was not to be around many people, and then as I said earlier, to be around 20 or 30 colleagues or peers in a classroom, and then to walk around campus with either 500 or up to 3,000, those challenges have unfortunately resulted in some students trying to learn how to navigate those. So to answer your question more specifically, it's K through 12, and it's something that we're addressing. Nobody is trying to dismiss it as something that, oh, we'll get through this and it'll just take care of itself. So as we continue to navigate through and support our students in doing this, we are seeing improvements as well.
Right, thank you. Other question?
I had a question. So I know that we have wellness centers at the high schools, and we have the prison clubs at the elementary schools, and we've added to elementary schools, but I feel like there's a little bit of a gap with middle school, and so I'm curious what other support systems we have or can or are putting in place for our middle schoolers to be able to have the same access to social and emotional support.
At our middle schools, we actually did increase our skip counseling days up this year. So there's a higher presence of days where students can be served by our skip counselors. We also have the access tutorial periods where teachers are monitoring and seeing where students might need extra support beyond academics. I would agree, there's probably more of a need, and that's something that we're constantly keeping a pulse on and navigating what we can balance with the resources we have and the resources that we've brought forward. I know this year we really focused on elementary, and we grew our wellness centers and expanded the social workers that are there. The luxury of the 5 social workers that Dave supervises is they kind of travel from site to site where there's a need. So I think at our middle school level, we're constantly looking to see what sites have more of a need and then dispersing the resources there.
Thank you.
Dave, thank you very much for your report. One of the things I saw back in the springtime when we started having some of our students come back, I remember, and I think I may mention in this forum, standing in front of one of our elementary schools and seeing kindergartners show up for school for the first time, 3/4 of the way into their school year or more, and recognizing each other just from being on the screen together, but never seeing each other in person. I also think about visiting a middle school on their first day back, and particularly 6th graders having to get a tour of their school, again, 3/4 or more of the way into the school year. And I'm just wondering if we're seeing any differentiation between kids that originally came back to school and those then that, for whatever reason, didn't come back physically to school sites until the new semester, and particularly kids that are now, even now, transferring back into, from an online learning situation, now individually into more of that, in-person class situation. If we're seeing any distinction in terms of how long it's taking some to adapt and that type of thing.
That's a great question. I have not been told or been notified that there has been any type of identification between those types of students, what their situations are. But I think that's a good question to ask. So in our work as district staff and working with our school sites, and Jessica Colson, who's a coordinator with the school district, who's also leading this work with social emotional well-being, that's something that we can put on our agendas when we go to school sites and as we meet with our mental health support workers, our counselors, our social workers, and psychologists. So thank you for that.
Very good. Thank you.
Dave, you mentioned when you were referring to the significant legislation that governs discipline, on an elementary site where there's just a principal and no other administrator, do our elementary principals have the support they need to deal with really challenging behavior that happens, on a regular basis? Or do we need other options?
Well, as a former longtime elementary principal and middle school principal, but elementary, my second longest stint in our district school, we do. It is a tough job on a day-to-day basis. And I would argue that our elementary principals do a great job of balancing and have gotten used to working with their team, their site support team, their psychologist, their MTSS coordinator, teacher leads on the campus. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge. It is a challenge from year to year. Students, young students specifically, Dave's point earlier, they struggle. They're young. They're 5, 6, 7 years old. They do not know how to keep their hands to themselves. And so navigating that when you are one person with 3 to potentially, 800 students on a campus can be challenging. Absolutely.
And if I can add, not taking us too far afield, but you'll recall from the Access to Excellence report that I brought forward in September that social emotional supports is high on that list. Also having the appropriate personnel, which may include additional personnel going forward that we have to sort out ways to fund, because there is clearly a need and we have to fill that need, but it's challenging when there aren't enough people at the site to assist. So that is something we are keeping very much front of mind.
Thank you. So I have a comment about that because I recently did a site visit to Sycamore Elementary, who is one of my assigned schools. We all have different schools that we're assigned to, even though we govern the whole school district. And I spent some time with the principal there, Principal Bullard, and she is amazing, and the staff there is amazing. But she did share with me how challenging it's been with some of the behavioral issues that are on top of just the regular ones that we see, as Dave shared about, to be able to handle all of that and not have the personnel that she needs to be able to do that. So I think we need to take a look at that. That's 600 kids at that site. And I want to support our administrators because they're doing a very, very difficult job right now, especially in the last couple of years.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Not, I have two public comment cards on this item. So Matthew Hoffman for 11.1.
Thank you, Board, for taking up this topic. It's an important one. And I mean, I don't know where to start because I've been personally impacted by this. So I'm going to try to objectify this in a little bit. This is kind of coming full circle from the beginning of this meeting in that we have words up here, we have things that we're talking about, but then the actual outcomes that we're looking at don't match the words that we're putting on the screen. Sure, we have support staff at elementary, we have increased support staff, but do we have Rainbow Room at every elementary school? No, we don't. We have situations where we have counselors at elementary schools, maybe every other day. But when do we think that these incidences of violence are happening? They're happening on those days when those counselors aren't there. And this isn't just at recess or in playtime. This is also happening during instructional minutes and during teacher-led activities. There has been incidences, and Trustee Clark is bringing it up, about students in instructional minutes assaulting teachers, literally throwing objects and hurting these teachers. I was talking to one teacher at, not necessarily at Sycamore, who was talking about, oh, well, my plan for when this happens is I go and I make sure I secure the student. And then I have, another kid in my class who I trust, and I tell them to run to the teacher next door to get them so that they can talk to an administrator. And that's not right. That's not maintainable. That's not something that this group should be doing. And when you have individuals who are causing these kind of violent disruptions, and there is no disciplinary recourse. We talked before about building the plane while it's flying, but now we're building the plane while it's flying without any tools. So we don't have the same tools available to these administrators to do their jobs and to keep every student in that school safe. And Dr. Malloy talked about it earlier, say that conditions for lack of success is one of the highest priorities of this board. And when you have a single student who is violently disrupting a class, who parent volunteers say, hey, let's go and gather up all the scissors to make sure that this doesn't escalate. And then all the students have to be cleared out of that classroom so that the one kid can be addressed. How do we address those 26 other kids that now have lost however many instructional minutes over the course of this year? And then, I know I'm running out of time, but we got to look at an introspection aspect of this too. Like, how much is the cure worse than the disease? I've never spoken against
Thank
masking.
you, Mr. Hoffman. That's 3 minutes.
But how can the kids know what they're talking about when you can't see them? It's every elementary book we look at. They look good.
Okay, Helen of Doherty Valley.
So I want to talk about the social emotional aspect of what Mr. Kravitz just mentioned. I want you guys to know that even though I'm an adult, the way you guys have been treating me for the, past meetings, whenever you shut me down, it also hurts. But just because I'm an adult, I can handle my emotional distress when people I know treat me in a discriminative way. However, when it's a student, they may not be able to handle that. I know that you guys and any administrators are not going to go up against the communist Chinese community because you guys are much greater than me. There are very, very few Taiwanese Americans in our community. So what I'm asking is that I'm not going to burden the administrators or you guys to fight for our social emotional well-being. What I'm asking for the communist Chinese community is to let us be. Please do not impose what you believe in your home country, in this country, which is United States of America, and try to force us to fit into your idea of what Taiwanese is, what Chinese is in America, and all that kind of stuff. Please, just let us be. So then in classroom, the teachers won't have to handle the conflicts between a communist Chinese student or a Taiwanese American student. I'm asking for respect and the freedom to just let people be. Lastly, I want to address the gentleman that was here. I want to say that I was very touched when he said that he was from Compton and he lived that kind of life every day. I can empathize with that because when I grew up, the Black people I knew are like that. So, I am going to ask you guys a question. If you guys teach those Compton language in our classroom, then outside of the classroom, if somebody blurts out, mother, are you going to give them suspension? You need to be honest. If you allow a teaching of certain things, then don't dock them outside. So I want to empathize with the gentleman and to show my support for his social emotional well-being. As a Taiwanese American, I'm going to do the same thing. Let's go, Brandon. Thank you.
Yeah, I think my comment would be I'm assuming that our teachers are teaching all students as Americans. So anyway,
I'd like to make a comment
Oh,
before
sure.
we move to make a motion. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
I just want to ask that that as we're moving forward with working on this, as your team moves forward, that you look into additional supports that perhaps we can implement and what that means, what that costs. Just think outside the box and don't assume that because we don't have it, we can't do it. So.
And thank you. If I may, I'm going to go back to the report because if we go back to September 14th, we're already pretty outside the box. We've already priced what that's going to mean. And we're going to bring that to our community to say, these are our challenges. We know that our counselors are necessary. We appreciate our social workers. We understand, especially in elementary, that we don't have enough administrative support. I have no trouble stating that publicly to you because you know it as well, and we've heard it tonight. Our challenge is then how we're going to potentially not do some things or generate some revenues in other ways. And my hope as the superintendent working with you is that we could make a clear and evidence-based case for why these resources and supports are needed so that we can, in essence, engage our whole community on how to make that happen. We've got some ideas. It's going to unfold over the next 4 months. But I promise you that we're trying to go so far outside the box because we know our kids need it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks.
We need to extend time, please.
Oh, okay, I need a motion.
We're almost to the end, right?
Right.
I move we extend to 10:15.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Mintz. Call out vote. Board Member Batra,
Aye.
Board Member Clark,
Aye.
Board Member Bratt,
Aye.
Board Member Hurd,
Aye.
Board Member Mintz,
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. 12.0, administrative matters. So we're down to board reports. Ronit, do you have anything else you'd like to report?
Today I was able to attend a chat with the local community, primarily parents who have students at Monte Vista High School at an event called Coffee with Kevin, which my principal hosts pretty much every month. So through there, I was able to connect with some of the stakeholders on the parents' end rather than on the students who I'm usually interacting with. Apart from that, we have been running our student senate meetings pretty regularly. I do still want to be able to have a little bit of like a virtual office hours sort of format for other students outside of the Senate to come in. But my student board member email is fully active for any students who are looking to reach out, who are facing troubles on their campus or who have an opinion on a certain issue which they feel needs to be worked on. And that is studentboardmember@srvusd.net. Just wanted to make sure that was out there if anybody is looking to contact me for any sorts of like exchanges and understanding what can be done. But apart from that, thank you. That
Okay,
is it.
thank you. Shelley?
Yeah, so I've been doing some site visits again. I was at Sycamore in the last couple weeks. I'll probably take a little break with the holidays, give the administrators a chance to deal with the grades and all of that, and start that again the first of the year. Ken and I attended the Town of Danville liaison meeting, and the town received $10.5 million from the American Rescue Act, and they donated $100,000 to the San Ramon Valley Education Foundation to support local schools. So once again, our partners at the Town of Danville continue to support our students. Monte Vista has a new resource officer, Dan Lynch, and I asked the chief about the training that resource officers receive to work in schools. They receive extra training to become resource officers on top of the training they receive in mental health and threat assessment in other areas. So we're fortunate to have that kind of support from our police department. The town also, there's a housing assessment that was established by the state of California for different towns and cities. And the Danville plan was from the state was that they need to accommodate 2,241 new homes within 8 years. And they appealed that, and the appeal was denied. And the reason I bring it up is because there was an estimate that approximately 20% of those would have. So that affects our numbers here at the school district, and hopefully that if they are going to have to build more housing, that we'll have some increase in some of the students in our district. I was at the first meeting of the Social Emotional Wellbeing Committee that was held on October 28th, and it's made up of all different stakeholders, and we will be doing some work around social emotional learning and well-being. I was also at the first meeting of the Facilities Oversight Committee, Parcel Tax Committee. That is the committee that oversees the spending of the parcel taxes that are collected every year from our community, and they ensure that those taxes are used for the appropriate things that the ballot measure established. Suzanne and I attended the middle school Impressions of Light art show at the Village Theater. Some incredible art from our middle school students all over the district. And of course, Gary Levesque, who is amazing art teacher from Charlotte Wood, helped put on that show, and he was there. And it was just really incredible, the talent that we have in this district. Susanna and Rachel and I were at the Purple Heart ceremony on Veterans Day at the Veterans Hall in Danville. And Danville is now a Purple Heart city, which honors all of our veterans and those who have given their lives in service to our country. And there was an amazing exhibit at that show that would be great for everybody to be able to see. And finally, last night I attended a listening session on Zoom that was put on by the National Alliance for Mental Health and the County Board of Supervisors. And it was regarding the formation of the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice. And this is something that the Board of Supervisors have voted on to fund this office as I'm hoping that it's going to be a resource for us as a school district to be able to get information and to collaborate with regarding racial equity and social justice. And in that meeting, we heard from students, parents, administrators from our district and other district about the challenges getting mental health and special education services and issues surrounding implicit bias and racism. So it was a really great meeting, and I look forward to hearing more about what that office is going to be about and what their function is going to be, and they're still formulating that. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Ken and I met a couple of times with Terry about the board advocacy ad hoc committee. I said that correct, yes. We're developing a roadmap so that the board can further advocate for our students and for our entire community. And I'm really excited about what we're doing and what we're able to help facilitate for the rest of the board and into the future. I also had the pleasure of going to Doherty Valley High School and seeing the Day of the Dead altars. And I think that not only was it moving, but it was a really great example of deep learning and cultural learning in our school district. And I was very impressed with what I saw. And then I am a part of the Equity Steering Committee and the Climate and Culture Committee, and we met in the last couple of weeks. And again, it's great to see the diversity in the Equity Committee group. It was nice to hear from the different voices, and it really was thought-provoking. I have a tendency sometimes to kind of look in one direction, and it was eye-opening to see all of the directions that I could look into, and I was really grateful for that and for the committee and the perspectives that were brought to that committee. So, and thank you, Hong, for facilitating both of those meetings. And then I am looking forward to, in the next couple of weeks, to volunteering at some of our school sites and doing some noon duty. I think that, as we know, there's a staff shortage, and I'm looking forward to this as an opportunity to not only support the schools, but actually be surrounded by kids and the joy of being on the school site. So thank you.
I too wanted to compliment Hong on the Equity Committee meeting. I thought that the breakout session work that we did was really valuable for setting the stage in a committee, beginning to work together, but also to really dig into the issues. And I love how you talked about it with different places to look. That totally represents it. I attended the San Ramon Valley Mental Health Coalition, which is run by Kathy Shiverton at Discovery Counseling Center. Susanna was there with me too, as well as many members of our staff. The district was really well represented, and it was great to hear about the work that the county level committee is doing and the pilot that is happening within the valley for the fire department to be the first responders on mental health oriented calls rather than the police, just to de-escalate the environment. And it was really great to have Chief Meyer and Captain Denton Carlson both sharing the perspectives of that, about all of that, in such a just open, just real way. It, wasn't political or positional. It was just really practical. And Denton had actually even come to the meeting in a coat and tie. And he talked about how, as a police officer, he pays attention to that, because you're a different presence in a room when you're in your uniform and you're holding your holster. So that was really interesting and really eye-opening about some of the nuances of these issues that we're hearing about. I really enjoyed attending at Coyote Creek, their second annual Native American Storytelling Showcase. I didn't get to stay for all of the chunk of performances, but the third and fourth graders that I saw just were amazing. And it was so great to see them honoring the indigenous cultures of the Bay Area and doing it in such a confident way. And here they had masks on, and some of them you could barely hear, and then others were just projecting right through their masks. It was really awesome, and lots of parents watching too. Like Shelley, we were at the Veterans Day celebration at the Veterans Memorial, which was again a really amazing community event, and there were all kinds of displays, which if you follow Susanna on Facebook, she did a great post about it. But the diversity, even in the displays, about the different veterans and their experiences was really amazing. There was a piece on the internment camps. I mean, they kind of covered everything. I too have started, Shelley's inspired me to get school site visits scheduled, and I was at Cal High today, and it was so amazing to be on a campus full of kids and full of energy, and I peeked in the wellness center, and I mean, I haven't been at Cal High in a year and a half, I think, and just they were so excited to show me stuff. We went into some classrooms. We saw this amazing lesson in a health pathways class where they had hearts they were dissecting. And I mean, it was just incredible. And the principal, Megan Kiefer, was talking about the lessons they learned by having kids back during the hybrid time last year, about exactly what we were talking about, how they don't really know how to interact, they'd forgotten, and how they'd put out ping pong tables and other kinds of games. And then this have carried over. So it's so great to see that, some things that came from necessity last year can become permanent things. We also went to an amazing art class. I am looking forward to more visits this week. I'm going to 3 elementary schools on Thursday, as well as yard duty tomorrow. And then we have the Diablo Valley San Ramon campus opening. It's a new building that I remember going to the ribbon cutting, so it'll be great to go to the opening of the event. And sorry I took so long, but it's been fun being out and really doing things. Thank you.
Just real quickly, several things that I had on my list have already been discussed. The liaison with Shelley as well as FOAC. One of the things I wanted to mention about FOAC was I was really pleased that we had a number of folks from the subcommittee that deals with design actually do a site visit to a couple of schools. And it was really great first that the members were willing to take the time and energy to go and visit the sites to help really enforce their understanding of the issues that we're still building on from a facilities basis. And I think it was really helpful for them to participate in that. It's a great group of folks that have really been very supportive of not just following the requirements from the facilities oversight perspective from Measure D, our bond measure from 2012, but also acting in an advisory standpoint to look at all of the different facilities needs that we have and really provide us with their input. The only other thing I mentioned is I'm looking forward this week. We're going to have our first meeting of the Access to Excellence Steering Committee. I'm really looking forward to having that group together and really starting to get that work moving forward as well.
Okay. Well, the nice thing being the last is that mine will probably be pretty short, but yes, I've participated in the various things that along with my colleagues. Just wanted to add, I think that I was invited to speak to a group of Boy Scouts, local Boy Scouts, and basically to explain to them, I think I was helping with a fulfillment of a badge, right, a merit badge. And they actually asked a lot of thoughtful questions about what we do as a board. Yeah, so, middle school and high school students. So really had a lot of fun with that. And just want to add to what Shelley said about the Impression of Light, the art exhibit, amazing. And it's at Village Theater still until December 17th. So it's there. Want to encourage everyone to go and really view because it's amazing. I mean, these are our middle school students, and they're using a lot of different media, and yeah, it's incredible. So do go. That's it for me.
Thank you, and I'm going to be a minute, so we don't have to move the meeting forward.
Oh.
We're all doing lunch. The entire district office is volunteering to do lunch, and you know what? Even though it's a necessity, as we said, thank you for being willing as well. We're connecting with kids, and some of us don't have that opportunity as often as we like. Many of us get out every week, but not all of our staff has that opportunity. So I'm grateful that it could have a positive unintended consequence, even though we do have a challenge to fulfill. We've already talked about access to excellence, so I won't speak more about that. We'll have more for you coming forward. But I also want to share that I am working through the Suburban School Districts Organization, and you will be involved in this as well, because it's not just superintendents, it's also board members and parent leaders to help convene those school districts who are like ours in terms of funding and in terms of generating revenues, especially determining enrollment that's not increasing. And we aren't basic aid, which means we don't have the same opportunity to use taxes, for example, and property taxes, for example, and that we also don't serve a large number of students who might be dealing with socioeconomic challenges. The third thing I want to share is that we will be bringing forward to our community in the technological realm. It's called Securely. It's going to be used by our staff. It's something parents can opt into. It allows for us to have some sense of where our kids are navigating, because we've heard from many of our families that that is a need and something that is very much required. This information is going to be going out to all families in late November. The reason why I wanted to share it here is just because it's been piloted in a few places. It's not being used widely, but as some of our families have heard about it, there have been some concerns, and I'm simply communicating to our public through this meeting and to you. We're going to be communicating an entire information process, rollout and such, so we'll be able to communicate effectively. Really quickly, we have heard a lot this evening, and I hate that it's actually 10:17, because the one message that keeps coming back to me, and I'm disappointed sometimes that many of the people who are with us at the beginning aren't here at the end, but it's about compassion and empathy. And we heard a lot of perspectives at the beginning of this meeting. And yet, if I can put it out there, we have to move forward in a way that doesn't contradict things. If we hold that all kids deserve to be successful and we are holding on to compassion and empathy, it demands education and it demands accountability. And that means that sometimes we got to be in the middle of this work that isn't always so clear. But I appreciated that what kept coming up is compassion and empathy, even when we saw some disagreement of perspectives. And context does matter. So when we hear about curriculum or a paragraph or a sentence or a song or a word, there's a lot that goes on around that. And we're going to continue to work with our families to be sure they understand the whole context of what we're doing and why. And it's something we're spending a lot of time on. In terms of our strategic directions, I want to be really clear with our board members that we're still in a phase where some of these commitments are at the awareness stage. Some of our community have asked, but where are the goals? Why aren't they more concrete? What are you going to accomplish by next month? And what we've had to do because of some of the challenges at the beginning of this school year is we haven't had a full foot on the gas. It's just too much. Our staff can only do so much. Our kids are connecting back with us and such. But what we also know we need to do as we move from the awareness stage into much more concrete actions, the concept of the SMART goal, that notion of specific, measurable, attainable, and so forth, you're going to see that. We're just not there yet, because if you go back to last June when you finalized the direction, I asked you for 6 months for us to kind of work with the concepts. I'm going to be asking you for a little bit more than 6 months right now based upon what we've heard from our staff, but I wanted you to know that that is the direction that we're heading in. It's a tough reality some days, but it's an exciting opportunity to serve our students. And thank you. I went 4 minutes over because I couldn't get it done in a minute.
That's all right. And I just want to also add, because I forgot, that I had a chance to be in a session with other board presidents, with Steve Glazer, our state senator, and for our district, and Assembly Member Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, who wanted to hear from the different districts on our challenges, and I did share it with them. So just want to add that, and with that, okay, we're adjourned.
Thanks, Suzanne.